Welcome to this edition of At the Mic. I'm your host, Keith Malinak, and this is a live edition of our Thursday deep dive, as is typical. However, you may be surprised to hear me say that, considering it's the 4th of July, 2024, and I thought it was important that we sit down together today and have this conversation about election integrity. We are in an election year. This is something that I feel has gone completely unresolved. And I think it's important because 248 years ago, our founding fathers gathered in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and they agreed that, you know what, it's time for us to part ways with the British crown. A monarchy was not meant for these Spitfire American colonies. Our ancestors determined that we were meant for something better. And we were meant to forge our own path and form our own country with a government that we, the people of the United States, would determine through elections, where the consent of the governed was the primary objective. Now, through America's imperfect history, that hasn't always been the case. Some elections haven't always been secure. And the path America has taken hasn't always been the path America and Americans have chosen. And I picked this day for this episode, for this conversation about the very important topic of election integrity. Independence is not a static thing. It's got to be not only declared, but defended. And our hero troops have done that for 250 years. And it's our duty as voters inside the American experiment to continue the legacy of freedom as well. So I want to chat today about how we got to where we are and what we're experiencing with our elections. And we better get things under control immediately. And I wanted to sit down and have this conversation with a man who is a successful American businessman, a celebrated inventor. He's a tech guru. He's the author. I got so many Post-it notes on this thing. I got to take my Post-it notes off the cover of this. He wrote this book, Countdown to Chaos, Silent Federalizing of Elections. And this is this right here. I've got so much to talk to him about. In fact, what I would like to do before I bring Jovan Pulitzer on here with me, we have a video, just a quick 2-minute video. Just explain who he is so you know who you're about to hear from. And I want to go ahead and play that video with an introduction here.
Great ideas are brought to life by great thinkers. One such thinker, Jovan Pulitzer, has contributed over 500 patents to our technological world. The United States Patent Office shows that as many as 40 new inventions have stemmed from each of his pioneering patents. Today, built upon his incredible success, Jovan Hutton Pulitzer innovates in the areas of virtual and augmented reality, data analytics and global data platforms, nanoanalytics, healthcare systems, mobile streaming communications, as well as monetization technologies. Some of his groundbreaking innovations are right in front of you every single day. A barcode has long been just a bunch of lines on the bottom of a box of cereal. But today, every product, article of commerce, and even people have a unique identifiable code. Everything in the world has become interconnected, and like magic, we can use our device's camera to read barcodes and unique QR codes. A now ubiquitous technology that Jovan ideated and patented. For a long time, software was purchased on floppy disks and CDs, and it was a hassle when there was an update to install. Today's devices know when there is an update available, and then automatically take care of that behind the scenes for us. Another one of Jovan's patents that we take for granted every day. Several years ago, viewing the same website from a computer to a laptop to a mobile device always seemed to make it look wonky and broken. Thanks to one of Jovan's patented ideas, websites fit perfectly into the screen you're looking at. That's what we call responsive design. We all remember when taking a toll road meant digging around your car for loose change to pay the attendant. What a traffic jam. These days, manned toll booths are a rarity. A tag in our vehicles linked to our credit card automates the payment process. Our inventor Jovan Pulitzer innovated the device that lives in your car and the system to capture and process that message.
Wow. Wow. The man's ubiquitous. I think that's safe to say. And in fact, I'm giving him the controls. I want to bring him in here. Jovan, thank you so much for making time. And folks, if you're not familiar, rumble.com/Jovan Hutton, Pulitzer, JOVAN HUTTON. Oh, it's right there on the screen. My bad. Anyway, so like I said, I'm giving you the controls here, and I want, because I know you've got so much to share, and I'm looking forward to just, and in fact, I already know how angry I'm going to get just by reading through the book as well. But I also want to bring in a forensic researcher to join us. She's not going to appear on camera, but Eve DePita, I have unmuted your microphone, so you probably have plenty to say while we're sitting here talking. I am honestly just going to sit back and enjoy the presentation with everyone else, and I will probably chime in on occasion with my own questions. But Jovan, thank you so much for making time. Eve, same to you. Please take it away.
Happy Independence Day.
Thank you for having us. I'm gonna let Eve go first. When you want deep expert forensic, that's Eve's specialty in this work. And the depth of uncovering these things. I mean, she's the bomb, of course, just like anybody that we all work together in forensic or research has to be protected. But we thought we'd just give you a very, very quick thumbnail, just a, maybe a 30, 40-second overview of what the book is, Countdown to Chaos. And then, because I like to teach, seeing is believing, I want to take you through so you understand what this looks like and understand in forensics and investigations. How do you confirm what's happened to an election? And we'll kind of take you through a very eye-opening process. So, Eve, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you, Jovan. A great friend and just a great person to work with. This has been, I don't think Jovan or I even asked for this to be laid in our laps. It just is one of these things that is kind of God sent, if I mean, people can understand how these things happen. But I was introduced to somebody, it was from the state of Kentucky after their gubernatorial race in 2019. There were some findings that were found by a group. They weren't considered insignificant by the group, but they were working with a few attorneys. The main one, I don't know if I should mention names, Jovan. Probably not. But the attorneys said, it's not enough for us to do anything which Jovan will tell you is the standard sort of thing. If you don't have enough ballots or findings to sway an election, nobody's going to take any time. So this information was, handed over, and I forged a relationship with the person that worked on this and found it. And it was very interesting to see what came out of it. And I think a lot of this came from, first of all, kudos to Glenn Beck. The Nick Sandmann case, he put together with a timeline, he called it TikTok, which he took every single shred of data that he could find, and he put it in a timeline with time and date stamps. Jovan is going to tell you how he did this with ballots. But as information was found, working through pieces, every single thing in this book, it was set into a timeline, and with no intention to write a book, but the story the timeline told was shocking. And what was amazing is while this was going on, Jovan was in Arizona, and I bounced things off of Jovan in Arizona, and he said, "Holy crap, like you wouldn't believe what I'm seeing." And it went back and forth between, and he can fill you in with some of the other names that were involved in vetting this information and looking through it. But what it turned out was nothing less than an indictment of our own government and the most shocking story that any of us could understand. So with that, Jovan, why don't you take it away?
And I think that's the important thing you just mentioned there. This isn't something that just happened like the last election, and all of a sudden we have questions about our elections. And by the way, don't let them shame you or make things uncomfortable for you or silence you into sweeping your questions about election integrity under the rug. This is something, as this presentation will unfold, this has been going on, honestly, for decades, if you really want to boil it down. But anyway, I'm going to sit back now, like I promised.
And if I may interject one more thing before Jovan, because once Jovan takes this over, I'm telling you, the man is so full of evidence. It's just, you just have to sit and absorb it all. But the information that was found in Kentucky, as was mentioned, was, to some people may have seemed like it was insignificant, but there had to be answers for it. And and you can't just make assumptions. And that's where there's some people in this movement in different groups. They make assumptions, and honestly, it kind of turns things into silliness. But what was really important with this is, okay, we have this. How could this happen? And then once you found the how could this happen, we'll prove it. And everything that we're going to talk about is stuff that you could prove in a court of law. This is hardcore factual evidence. Anyway. Go ahead, Jovan.
So that I'm gonna show people physical evidence of the full forensic audit in Arizona. It's the first time in history something like this has ever been done. And just like the book is everything they did to enable what I call a hot swap, which they actually enacted in full across the nation in November of 2020. People need to understand audits first. You're not doing audits to catch bad things. If that's your premise, you're already beginning wrong. You're compromised. You do an audit only to verify everything you're being told. Period. That's it. And in the process of doing an audit, when you start finding irregularities or issues, it's not that it's fraud. It's, in most cases, it can be maladministration. But if it's repeatable, it's malfeasance. If it's planned, of course, it goes to maladministration, malfeasance, etc. Now, we need to understand some of the issues that happen with our elections. I'm going to show you things that were not properly explained in the election, but I want you to go into this with three premise, folks. Number one, if you have nefarious plans for an election, you only need three things. Number one, you need time to execute your plan. Criminals take time. They plan it well. There are events that you do pre-election. There are events that you do during the election. There are events that you do after the election. So you need time. The second part of it is you need what's called fungibility. Now, in an election, fungible assets would be like if you wanted to trade your retirement account, cash, and you wanted to trade it for gold of equal value. That's called fungibility. You're just swapping it for something else. In elections, the fungibility assets are extra voters, and they come in different flavors: fake voters, illegal voters, dead voters, etc., or people that didn't vote and you knew it, but somehow you vote for them. And then you need an overabundance of ballots. That means ballots that were overprinted, ballots that were captured, or ballots that you actually print on demand and hope nobody notices. And then last but not least, and this is the most important thing, and this is the premise of the book, you need to have real-time information of everything that goes on in the election. Because if you have a precinct that has 2,000 voters and you just dump an extra 1,000 ballots in there, you're going to get caught. And the system's designed to make those things stand out glaringly. So to pull off the charade, you got to make America believe it was a close race, it was hard fought, but you don't want to trigger the rules and laws about that would trigger an audit. So it's all this game, but it's about information. And so two things to set in your mind. Normally, you'll find a Secretary of State or Attorney General that will always find somebody that voted Mama's dead ballot. And you ask yourself, how did they do that? Well, they'll always find one. And that's so just like they did in Arizona. Brnovich found one lady that voted her mom's dead ballot, that voted several days before the election, but she voted it anyway and said it's because her mom would have wanted it. Well, they find it, they prosecute it, they get an agreement. That is called voter fraud. Today's discussion, we're not talking at all about voter fraud. Throw it out. See, they'll always find that one person so they can say in Maricopa County, 2.8 million voters, and we only found one person that committed voter fraud. They do that on purpose so it looks de minimis, okay, to pin it down very small. What you're going to see today is the definition of election fraud. They are two different things. Now, election fraud, you know, as federal racketeering. It's how they brought down the mob. And when you can prove election fraud, or RICO, R-I-C-O, racketeering and influence, you understand how bad this has gone. So I'm going to kind of take you through it so you understand some of the key things that we look for to do this. Now, number one, forensics. You probably remembered all the people on the floor out there that you had all these fancy colors and all this other stuff on the floor, and people were using high def cameras to do my particular. Well, this particular photo I'm just showing you on the screen for comparison is basically a thread through a needle, but that thread, which of course you think is together, is not. This is what it looks like under forensics. And so imagine being able to do this with a ballot to understand the nature of a ballot, because all of this was supposed to be mail-in ballot. So first, I'll just start from the top. You're going to learn today in Maricopa that none of the numbers matched, not a one. You're going to learn today that when the Board of Supervisors on November 20th of 2020 basically declared Joe Biden had won the race by approximately, by approximately 10,000 some odd votes, they never had that number. You're also going to learn that on November 30th, when Katie Hobbs and Governor Ducey, Katie Hobbs as Secretary of State, or Governor Ducey in Arizona, was just about to certify the election. And there's that infamous piece out there where you hear Ducey's phone ring, and it happens to be the ringtone he's assigned to the president. It's because President Trump's calling him saying, don't certify this. There's no way you can. The numbers are wrong. Well, you're going to find out, in fact, President Trump was 100% telling the truth. The numbers are wrong. And then you're going to see something just totally, absolutely appalling. So let's just kind of start here. I'll give you a wide shot, and then we'll go into it. If you were looking at what Maricopa Board of Supervisors, that's who runs the elections, reported, you're kind of looking at this. So let me explain this very simple chart for you. Across the top, Maricopa is divided in 5 districts. Districts 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You only have 3 types of ballot. You have what's called a machine folded ballot. Now, remember, we're looking for rules, right? We're looking for hard rules we can measure against. Well, a ballot that is printed and then put into an envelope with a return envelope is called a ballot packet. Those are made on an assembly line by very high-tech machines. And those machines are just to the nanometer. I mean, they are tiny, tiny microscopic correct. They have to fold properly or else the equipment can't get the envelope in. So as we heard in 2020, that the election was predominantly done by mail-in ballots. And it was the first time in history that we had dumped so many mail-in ballots and that the nation had followed along. So that's the first thing we measure against. How many of the ballots, based on what they said, that could we really tell by forensics, looking at it closely, were machine folded? Now, there should have been, across the precincts, under all circumstances, it should have never exceeded 84.13%. I'm looking at the little orange banner at the top. Now, you can look straight down that column. You can see all districts failed. They had less. They had significantly less than was reported. So you have to ask yourself, wait a minute. If you said all of these ballots came in that were mail-in ballots, and there was 84.13% of them, and those are actual mail-in ballots, but you didn't make those numbers up, they weren't really real, well, what happened? Well, then you look to the next category of ballots. Now, that's called technically an early vote or a walk-in ballot. Now, what that means is the county has mailed you a ballot. You decided for whatever reason not to use the machine folded ballot. You walk in to your voting precinct or wherever you vote, and you say, I'm here to vote early. Remember, they think people can't have IDs and people can't have days off and people can't drive cars, or you take your horse and buggy to the election, so you need a full day to get there election day. That's what they do early voting for. Used to be for people that were in hospitals or overseas. Now it's just open to anyone. Now, in that scenario, you walk into a place to vote, you check in ostensibly, they're supposed to check your ID, which they didn't do. And what they do is they look you up to know where to put you, meaning your precinct, and they print for you a ballot. That is a walk-in early vote ballot. Now, the ballots that are mailed are in color. The ballot that is designed to be walk-in is decidedly in black and white. So the first thing we can look for scientifically as we look at, is this a white color ballot or a black and white ballot? Then there's a second unique character. That character is when you get this ballot printed out from the machine, you fill it out, and then you personally fold it. Are you going to fold it exactly like a machine folds it? No. Does it need to be folded perfectly? No, because it's not going in an envelope. It's just going into a box. How many times when you were in grade school or otherwise did you try to fold a piece of paper perfectly in half, but you look at the other end and you got one little lip or dog ear sticking up? It's very hard to do.
Right.
Now, those are how we can scientifically look for the marker of, hey, is this an actual early vote ballot? So we look at them. Well, once again, those should have not exceeded 7.53%. But as you look through it, remember, we didn't have enough mail folded, but in the hand folded, it was off the charts. We had 25% plus more hand folded ballots than there ever should have been. So now you're going, okay, you don't have them in true mail-in. You got an overabundance in your hand folded one. And then the last category is called no fold. Now, no fold is when you walk in on election day. They print the ballot out for you, or they're replacing a bad ballot, your dog chewed on it or whatever. Those are all flat. Those are all black and white, and there's no reason to fold them because they just drop in a box. You're not doing a fold. Now, again, they give us their numbers. Their numbers should not exceed 8.34%. But when you look at the numbers, they are off the chart. Totally off the chart. Now, if you realize both hand folded and no fold are black and white ballots, and it's only machine fold that is color, you look very quickly that we have hundreds of thousands of ballots that shouldn't exist, that they shouldn't be in black and white. They shouldn't have hand fold signs, and they shouldn't be flat. And this is kind of what made me realize that we could do this, because if you remember when the first people were looking at what happened in Antrim County, maybe Michigan, and it's supposed to be all these mail-in ballots. I kept on seeing stacks of pristine ballots. And I'm going, how can they be pristine and be flat when it's supposed to be mail-in ballots? Now, you could do this test right now. If you're sitting at home, post a note or piece of paper. If you were to fold a piece of paper in any way, just make a fold, you're going to see that fold, but you can't take it out. Even if you bend it the other way, try to crease the fold back out, you've now actually broke it twice. It's completely gone away. It's broke. It can never be flat again. So this is it. The bottom line is all Maricopa's numbers were BS. So let me kind of show you a few. Everybody talks about the counterfeit ballots. Now, what we do in our process is we are looking at the paper forensically. If you remember, I told you about we're looking at this forensically. And if you remember everybody out there on the floor, all the different colors, the red team, the blue team, the orange team, the green team. I did that because as we document this, if you're following my standard to create this, then if you're a green team member, you better not be over on the blue team. I want to know why you're out of your area because everything's documented. And since this was the first time in history it was done, it had to be done to an irrefutable standard and chain of custody that we know everybody that touched a ballot at every time. Now, Maricopa is the 4th largest county in the United States of America. It is the 2nd largest single voting block of people in the United States of America. So this one county is the equivalent, or is larger size in voting block than half of the states in the United States. So this is monumental. So we knew we would be picked apart and everything else. So let me kind of show you what forensic looks at. So the first thing you need to understand is there's a thing called machine vision. It means nothing more in the geek world than using a camera. You experience it every day when maybe a police officer is radaring you, or on assembly lines, or if you have a self-driving car. There's a camera somewhere that's reading the environment so it can understand what to do. In the case of your cards, it knows the difference between a double white line, a curved line, a yellow line, a dotted line, etc. It knows the rules. Remember, think of a road. You know by the color, you know by whether they're solid or not, or you got solid here, dotted here, or it's dotted here, solid here. You know you can pass, can't pass, or it's a curve. It's the same thing. So we teach cameras to understand what it's looking at. Now, it's the way everything is manufactured today with your computers, your phones, aircraft parts, everything. Everything's done by machine vision these days. Now, a repetitive process is called machine learning. Once you teach the camera to see it, as you put through millions of it, it begins to understand, oh, okay, here's the variabilities. That's called machine learning. And then last but not least, when you take computer vision and you combine it with machine learning and it begins to run on its own, it becomes artificial intelligence. And I'll give you an example. You might not know that you are one of the most proficient artificial intelligence trainers in the world, but you are, and I'll prove it to you. Ever gone to a website and all of a sudden it pops up and it looks like a security warning and it says, click the crosswalk or click the stoplight. There's 9 photos and you got to show what the stoplight is. Most people have done that. Well, that's not a security feature. Basically, that is MIT trying to train their computers to become better. And so they're looking at all this data from driving car videos and stuff, and they can't quite make out, is that a crosswalk? Is that a spill in the road? Or they're looking at a stoplight and it's just the wrong angle for them to identify it, but the computer's saying, I think it's a stoplight. So here's what happens. Because you can learn, and because you have all this real-time experiences, and your eyes are better than any camera can be, and your brain is better than any machine learning can be, all they're doing when they serve you up, they're putting in there what they believe is already a stoplight. Then they also serve you the images that the computer gets wrong most often as a stoplight that aren't. And it asks you to click the 3 that are stoplights. In doing that process, you've made that website money. They've used your brain, which you didn't get paid for, and you're training computers to become smarter. So you, just so you know, folks, are the greatest trainers of artificial intelligence of the world. And that's how the system uses you. But let me show you how this works. I'm just going to kind of show you when we're looking at the paper, and I'll kind of describe it as it goes. So in all of this photography that we were doing, each individual corner you see here is where one of our cameras are pointed. Now I'm showing it to you in 4-screen format, but if we wanted to blow any one of these up, we can blow it up to the size of a billboard. Now I'm going to start it again because I want to point something to you. For the moment, just humor me, only look at the top left corner, because immediately you'll see something that tells you, oh, this is a folded ballot versus a flat ballot. Just watch the top left corner. See the fold? Flat, 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 fold, fold, flat, 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 flat. See, that's machine learning. Now, on the left, we're looking at how did the vote go. So you see Biden or Trump, that's what it's reading, and you're looking at the ovals. Now, if you look at that oval, you're seeing how people write. They might zigzag left, they might zig right, they might fill it out completely, they might scribble, they might not. It might be a Sharpie, it might be a gel pen, it might be a pencil, whatever the case may be if you're looking at the left. And so our systems are documenting this. Now on the right, that's the paper itself. We're only looking at the corner of the paper. Now this has special filters on it, and you see the little dots that are popping up that are circled in blue. We are confirming that this is the right paper, and we're looking for something that is a tiny fraction of a blood cell, and it's called a stochastic pixel. It is how your computer knows how much ink do you have left. It's not measuring the wells. What it does is it dribbles tiny microscopic yellow dots. And basically, once it dribbles it, then it can read it and understand, and that's how they know where you are in your ink process of doing it. So what we're doing is we're just confirming, okay, this paper has been printed on the proper machine because it dribbles stochastic pixels. Now look at the left bottom. You see how it's red? Okay. Now you see two versions of it. We're looking where it says vote both sides of the ballot. The bottom left corner, you see one version red, one version blue, that little cutout. This is how we double confirm, is this a color ballot? We're looking at that part that's printed by a color machine. And so the red being proper red will look red. And then in that insert window, in the frequency look, it will print out blue. That's how we tell, is it the proper ink? And so you're looking through this as it runs through just a bunch of ballots. And then the bottom right, it's kind of like the scope on a gun. If it's printed with the right paper and it's printed with the formal machines that are the only ones supposed to print colors, then that bullseye target should be basically right there at 100%. And you can see it just keep on dinging 100%, 100%, 100%, 100%, 100%. So this is the process by which we would conclude this is a proper ballot. It was voted by a human. It was printed correctly in color, and we can find the stochastic pixels to verify it is an authentic ballot. And when you look for ballots that, and you check it against itself, remember there are like 2 million ballots to deal with. So what you're doing is you're literally verifying it against itself. So if you have 2 million ballots, the propensity of ballots are going to be printed correctly by bulk. And then anything that's different than the average you get over just hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of ballots are going to stick out like a sore thumb. Now, let me show you why we do this. And I'm going to give you some simple numbers. Now, let's just kind of play a game. Maricopa's county is just like the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. It's 80 miles from one end to the other. If you did a cross axis like this, super long. And you have several ways you do your ballot. You either fill it out at home and you drop it in the mail, and it goes to one singular location. Now, what you need to understand about ballots going to a singular location, there is no sorting needed. Does that make sense? Because it's only going to one place. So then I have to sort them. They know exactly where it goes. Or you're dropping them in a drop box. Now, a drop box, basically what happens is you, in a drop box, things are gathered, let's say in a neighborhood, right? You follow what I'm saying? Or gathered in a neighborhood. Now, if they're gathered in a neighborhood, it's primarily people walking or driving by that box. So you have to basically believe they live there or they commute right there. So you're going to see a bulk of ballots from that drop box. Does that make sense? Because it's all the neighborhood people. So let's kind of take a look. Let's kind of take a look at some of the ways you can look at ballots when you look at them by forensics. So I'm going to give you an example. Ready? Number one. This is a batch in Maricopa. And this is what we call our batch cadence report. Okay. Basically, just so you read it real quick, it's batch number 7. And in batch number 7, there were 294 ballots. We measure it basically as early vote. And so basically, so you see 0.69%, they're saying that 99.31% of these ballots were election day. You see it? Because it was only 0.69% early vote. So they're telling you this is election day. Now, in 294 ballots, we found an anomaly that says, well, there's 217 precincts going here. So you got to ask yourself, if you're walking into your neighborhood place to vote, does that make sense? Well, look at the beginning. That little graph at the front, there are, from the one where the voting precinct is, they actually got 5 ballots. And then all of a sudden it's just 4, 4, 4, 4, 4, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2. Now that can happen, but only the first 4 or 5 precincts, which we highlight, are actually there. The problem we have with this, if people walked in to vote, is this. Every other ballot is 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, and it just goes on forever. So you got to ask yourself, is this how people vote? 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. Well, you have to go, okay, well, maybe people were commuting this day. So then you look at it like Q codes. This is what they want you to believe people walked in. They want you to believe that the average person to go to this vote center traveled 49 miles. That's what they want you to believe. Now, that's the first thing. It's not how the mail's delivered. They are not sorted at all. And you got to ask yourself, when you go to your vote center, do you think that many people from a distant place go there? Now, the only other explanation is they used the cover of Vote Day to basically then modify the ballots in a way that they want it. And I'm going to show you this in a little bigger form. Let me just set my screen here, so you understand what we're talking about. So I'm going to take that one off. I'm going to go here, and I'm going to share my screen. I just want you to look at it in a different format, really extremely close up. So here we go. So on my screen, you see this. Now I'm gonna zoom it up. And so you can see here that, see the acacia here? This is where it actually, the box was, in acacia. And you can see that 5 people came from there. And if you look at the other connections to it, those are plausible. But you got to ask yourself, when it starts hitting rhythm, why was it statistically from all these other places, it was just exactly 2 people, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, and it kept on doing it until it switched to just 1 ballot came in. And then when you look at the 1 ballot scenario, it's the same thing. You got to ask yourself, is this statistically possible that from all of these places, for whatever reason, only one person, one single person from all of these places traveled all across their metroplex just to drop off their ballot there on election day? And you quickly come to the summation, that's not how people vote. That's not how the mail is served or anything else. So the only other explanation when you look at it is, okay, they're backfilling ballots. They've got to put people in the right places, in the right precincts, so they know how to do it. So where does all of this end up? And I'm going to show you a few examples. I'll go through them. In this one batch alone, just this one batch, there were 21 absolute counterfeit ballots. Now, why is that important? Supposedly, Donald J. Trump lost the election by not quite a half a point. However, when you look at this, you're looking at almost 10% of the ballots are actually counterfeits. That doesn't even take into consideration black and whites or any of them. We're not even looking at any of it. We're just looking at, okay, let's look at just the early vote. How many are actually counterfeit? And just in this one little precinct, there are 21 of them that are counterfeit. So I tell you this because this is what forensic looks like. So let me kind of show you some other ones. I just want to show you some other places, and it will help you understand why forensics has to be done. And we're going to look at some other batches, and we pulled these randomly. There are 10,434 batches in Maricopa. 10,435 batches. So what we're going to do for you is in this random batch pool, we're going to go to the second one. Let me get it on my desktop here, pull it up. We're just looking at batch cadence. This particular batch was batch number 716. Remember, there's 10,435. So when you start to see counterfeits and you start to see the numbers are off, once you get that, you're looking for the anomalies. Well, here we go. We're going into this one little county. Now, it's not a lot of ballots, but in fact, there are 2 ballots that are actually counterfeit printed. Now, remember, this is where they printed something to make it look like a counterfeit ballot. But there is the advent of you can vote a legal, meaning a legal, not illegal, a legal ballot illegally. And here's how it works. When you flood the marketplace with ballots, and it's all out of control, there's going to be many people that fall into the category of what's called a 5 done. No such person, no such address, no such number, unknown, and dead. Those are called the 5 dones. And so when the state sends you a ballot, they're basically saying if it's coming back, we're going to count it. And of course, that's what they did, especially when they didn't do signature checks. So these things go out, but they come back as one of the 5 dones. Now that's tracked. Most of the states report their return packets within 30 days of the election. For some reason, Maricopa withheld that information for 16 months. You got to try to figure out why in the hell are you holding this information? When they finally reported to us and everybody fighting for it, Maricopa said they had, we're just going to call it 56,000. That's not the exact number, 56,000 ballots that came back that could not be delivered. Now, by federal law, they're required to keep them. They don't open them up or anything like that. They keep them. They're supposed to notify the voter, hey, your ballot was undeliverable. Now, to show you a good example of how bad our system's broken, here's how they do it. Your ballot just came back that says no such person. So in order to get you to correct it, what do? Take the same exact information, put it on a postcard, and send it right back to the same address and said, hey, your ballot was returned.
I mean, that's government.
Yeah, you need to confirm it's good or bad. And that's what they did. Now, let's say if that comes back bad again, what do they do with that voter? Well, what they do with that voter is they just set aside the file. They don't get rid of the person. Okay? What they do is they literally just set it aside and say, okay, well, this person's not there, and we can't confirm they're good, they're bad, or whatever. We're just going to let them sit there. And they can sit there in excess of 10 years. Yes, 10 years they can sit there. Now, okay, so you've got all this. Now, so they said it's 56,000. When we finally got the numbers from the federal government, by the Election Assistant Commission, by numbers reported by the post office said in Maricopa County, 110,000 ballots came back undeliverable. Now, the county reported 56,000. The EAC and post office reported 110,000, but there's even a bigger problem. The bigger problem was Maricopa, in violation of federal and state law, is supposed to keep them. They said, well, we just gave them to the ballot printer, and you're going to have to ask them. That's a big no-no. They're supposed to be kept secured for basically 2 years. When we went to the ballot printer, we got the word back, well, we didn't know we were supposed to keep them. We just destroyed them. Now, what can be done in that particular scenario is called ballot cracking. Now, think about this. If you can get a hold of a ballot packet, which has a good ballot inside and the return envelope inside, and you can get all of those back, in this case, 110,000, what do? You crack them open. You get people in a room to fill them out the way they want filled out. You seal them. You may have scribble on it or don't do a signature because they're not going to check. And then what do? You go around dropping those in drop boxes. That is what the mules do. And that's why they run around to all these little places, nonprofit NGOs, and they pick up a batch and then they run around town dropping it off. So it's not really dumping one box where you can see it would come from. And that's why on all of these things that happen, you look at these numbers. Here it is. Here's 199 ballots, early votes by drop box. And I think like 25 were exactly where the drop box was. But you see, you hit that damn rhythm. It's just 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 all across the board. And so this particular precinct, although it did have some counterfeit ballots in it, you got to ask yourself, if you just reach in and grab a handful of ballots, there's supposed to be 200 ballots. If you're at the post office and it all came in bulk and you just grabbed a handful, right? Luck of the draw. Would you get so many 1 1 1 1 1 1 1s? And this is how people traveled across that entire metroplex to vote there? Well, let's say it could statistically happen. Okay. All 10,435 batches have this exact same signature. Post office doesn't sort them. They're not supposed to sort them. They're just supposed to grab them and put them in buckets as they come in. Every single batch in Maricopa has that. And that's the issue of what they do. I'll cover just a couple other fine things, and we can get in talking and I can take your questions up. But I want to show you just a few other things so you understand how this is done. Now, we can go 100 different areas. What we do is we use, we had to create a way to create a fingerprint to understand how many machines were used. Because now we know we got a problem. We know we got all of these black and white ballots. And the one thing we know about a black and white ballot is it's not off the official printers. Mm-hmm. So the only other place it is supposed to come from is what's called the ballot on demand machine. Okay, it's the only other place is supposed to come from. It's either printed by the official printer, or you've walked into your precinct and they've printed you one. Now, they have a couple thousand, 3,000 of those machines that can print ballots. So I had to invent a way that I could identify the actual machine it came off of. Now, if you remember in our video that showed that we're looking at the bottom, and I'll remind you, bottom right-hand corner, what we're doing is we're looking for, is this the official ballot? And that's dead on 100%. However, when you look at these percentages, here's how we're doing. We're actually measuring the target. So our computers kick in and we're going boom, 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 boom. And this is basically computer vision and machine learning, trying to understand, okay, what the hell happened with these ballots and can we get an ID? So we know by this 100% ID, it's the actual Runbeck machines. Okay. And that's when we get that 100% mark. And that's what we're looking for in this process. We're looking for, okay, everything's okay. This is done properly. And it is printed by the correct machine, etc. Well, what happens here, and I got to find a video real quick. is all of a sudden the machines start throwing, and I don't know why my computer's not showing this. So hang on 1 second, and of course it would do this, right? Let me see here. Batch.
It's my presence. I jinx electronics, Jovan. I just want you to know that.
I swear we had far more videos, and I'm trying to figure out where in the hell did these videos go? Let's see. Is this it? No. Please.
One thing I've had to do through StreamYard is download videos or pictures sometimes to get them to play. Or I don't know if you're looking at the same screen, because as I mentioned earlier, I turned over the controls to you behind the scenes.
Right.
You go down, like when the files come up, if it goes down to the file thing, if you go to like all files or something, instead of just, I don't know if that helps any.
I can just show you this way. I found one I can show you. I want you to look at the bottom first. Okay. I want you just to look at the bottom right-hand corner first. I'm going to show you, if you think of that bullseye on the screen, you got north, south, west, east. Then you divide it by an X. Now you got north, northwest, right? West, northwest, right? You divide the pie like a compass. So we took basic compass navigation, and I taught it to read, what are we saying navigationally in these ballots? So I'm going to show you, you're going to see two things. If you're looking at the bottom right, you are looking at the calibration completely out of whack. And if you look at the top right above it, you're looking at ballots that if the left-hand side on the bottom's red, it should have mixed. You'll see red on the bottom left, but on the right, you should see those blue dots. So first, let me train your eyes. So you're looking at the top. You see the red on the bottom left. You see the bottom right. You see the calibrations 100%. You see the top right. You're seeing the little blue circles where we've targeted and show, okay, the stochastic pixels there. Now let me show you when it all goes wrong. Now you're looking, and all of a sudden, as it starts to run and play, you got red. Now the calibration's all over the place. You see the target moving. It just goes 0, 500%, 400%. But at the top, you have no stochastic pixels. This is when it's broken and it's trying to be an authentic one. And this is what it should look like here. It should be dead on. You should see it. But this is what happens. You should see it like this. It should be dead on. You should see the blue dots. You should see red on the bottom. And then all of a sudden, when we get it and we start seeing this stuff, oops, and you're seeing red, and you look at the calibration, it's 200% off. And we were generous. We gave it an allowance, right? These are thousands percent off, by the way. 500% would be. And
just to be clear, these are 4 images from the same
one ballot. You're looking at the exact same ballot. We have a full front. We have a full back. And then we have, after the full front and full back, we have isolated images, okay, that are able to show us, okay, is this proper? And we're looking at it in a deep forensic manner, right? Deep forensic manner to understand, okay, what are we looking at here? And how can we test it, right? How can we test it to understand this is right? And so what you do is you use those markers, and the markers we were using, like I showed you, was to show you, you got all these with markers. You have to understand what do you do without the markers once they're not there. Does that make sense? Yeah. So let's look at this one. Let's look at this one batch. So we're looking at batch number 7. It's the first one. It had all these counterfeit ballots. Now we're trying to identify the machine they used. Now remember, these machines are supposed to be dead bang on. Everybody's supposed to vote the same exact way. Would you agree? Everybody's supposed to vote the same exact way. So, well, here we go. Ready? There you go. Now, if we were looking at that octagon as the voting room, and you're supposed to be inside the green, and you're supposed to be dead on calibrated, everybody votes the same. Would you say, looking at this image, everybody voted the same? Not at all. In fact, only 7% of the people that voted in this batch actually voted, and this is just this one batch, actually voted according to the rules of the election by a machine that was properly calibrated. If you look to the right, we give warning signs. 10% is a warning sign. But if you look at the far right, where we kind of give the nuke one, you are basically looking at how bad the machines were out of calibration. The average in this one was 1,664% out of compliance. And the worst was 4,800% out of compliance. If we were to look at this batch of 296 ballots, 268 people did not vote the same exact way as everybody else. That's how egregious this was. Now, once we can ID this, an interesting thing occurs. When we get this heading, now you see this, let's look to the top. Due north is north. So you got north by northwest. You see that quadrant?
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, these are stacked deep because they're over it. Once we get a number on a machine, we can understand what happened. And here's a really interesting anomaly. This ballot, let's say these ballot printing machines that was supposed to be in vote center, let's say number 10, which means it was sitting there and that's what supposedly printed that ballot, right? Therefore, it should only correlate to vote center 10, where people went in. We're finding out the whole time all of their machines were printing ballots for some reason for all vote centers. Now, how do you do that? How do you have machines that's supposedly sitting in this one place only for this vote center? How do we keep on seeing its signature pop up in other places? 100% dead bang on. Why is it printing for vote center number 200? And that's why all the numbers are off. Now, the last one I'll show you, and I'm just going to get one kind of little anomaly here. Do you remember the thing about Sharpies?
Oh, I remember something in Sharpies. Oh, gosh. It was Arizona, right?
Right.
Looking for my Sharpie. Here we go. I remember something. I don't remember specifically what it was.
So you're not supposed to vote.
They ran out of Sharpies, right?
Right. You're not supposed to vote with a Sharpie on ballots.
Okay.
That's number one. It's been forbidden forever. Do not vote with a Sharpie on the ballot. And it's because the ballots bleed. Okay.
Okay. All right. That makes sense.
And when the ballot bleeds through, what happens is, and I am trying to find out why I cannot see this number. When the ballots bleed through, it looks like the machine's going, what the hell am I looking at? It'd be like dropping coffee on your ballot or, whatever the case may be. Okay. It's just not supposed to be there. One thing Maricopa did, now all of these precincts across the United States are the questionable, 6 states, 6 questionable precincts, Maricopa being one of them. For some reason, only for 2020, it began a brand new story out that Maricopa started selling their voters as saying, we've got a brand new paper. And that brand new paper is going to make sure that there are no bleed throughs on the ballots. Not going to be any. We're using a brand new paper. Well, everybody kind of was going, okay, what the hell are you talking about? But okay. The second thing they said at the end is you can use a Sharpie on the ballot. You can. Now, you inherently know that if you took your ballot and you doodled on it, you wrote on it, you circled on it, you drew a line or whatever, what happens is it forces your ballot to be adjudicated. Okay? And that adjudication basically means the machine goes, hey, I see something. Something's wrong. Now, the machine inherently knows something's up, but now it wants a human to click it and say, tell me what you see. Well, when you walked into the voting precincts in Maricopa, what they did is they eliminated pens. They came out with the story that pens gum up the machines. Never had in history, not one single call ticket ever to clean the drums of the scanners because of ink. And oh, by the way, if you fill it out at home and it takes several days and they sit there for a month before they officially scan them, that ink's dry. But they came out with this bogus story that the ink gums up the machines. So we're now giving you Sharpies. Well, those Sharpies create confusions on the ballot. And this is how we measure it. And this is what you need to understand. When the ballot, and I'll show you that, when the ballot cannot determine what the hell is really going on, it suspends it in time. It's on the books and there are votes there, but it's not going to come down to count until a human intervenes. Let's just look at this one ballot, period. Just one ballot, okay? Batch, this is one batch. There were only 294, right? 294 ballots in here. But these 294 ballots had 1,139 extra votes on them that should have never been there. And so when we look at it, we are seeing that for every vote that went in, they had 0.57% of an extra vote that was there. The most compromised, the worst ratio was 157% over. All of these create conflicts. And if you look at that one little 14th Amendment point, 54 votes on 294 ballots, and they happen to only occur really at the presidential level, was so close that the machine thinks it's a double vote. Now, the most important thing you need to know is forced adjudication. Adjudication really should be 2%, maybe 1%. That's the standard.
Let me see if I have an image that is useful for you here. Is that kind of what you're...
If you look at that image, yeah. And I don't know how that came to you and it's not on mine. I
was able to get it open, yeah.
Good. If you're able to zoom that up, look at that, folks. You see all those little ghost ovals right through the middle, even through the writing? Those are called bleeds. I was looking for that, and thank you for bailing me out. I couldn't find it. That's just one sample. So if we're looking, let's just wait. Stop right there.
Okay.
Right there.
All right.
Just look at the put the middle thread. Go scoot it up, the image up. Keep on going up till it comes to the middle. Keep on right there. Okay. Just look at the middle, folks. Let me show you something and show you how this works. This is bad paper, meaning it's not the right paper used, and you voted at a voting place in person, election day. Now you see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 properly voted ovals. Those are the top line. You see it right there in the middle. You can see it was a vote for Alan John or John Allen, a vote for Jerry Sherlock. Those are the real votes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now the ballot displays just along that one row how many extra votes appear. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. And that's just one line. And so what happened? Yeah, when this occurs, the machine doesn't know what to do. It's going, what the hell to do with it? If you'll remove that from the screen real quick. Oh, I got it. Never mind. So let me show you something. In 2016 and earlier, dealing with batches of 200, if in fact you had adjudications, it would normally be about 1 every 200 ballots. And then as we started edging into 2016, it became, it got to the point that it was 1 out of 50 ballots. Okay, so that was 4 adjudicated ballots out of 200. If it ever went past that, in other words, started getting worse than that, the standard protocol in every state across the United States was to retire that machine and take it out of service. Okay? So remember, the target number at worst case was, okay, we will live with 1 out of 50 that we got to modify. Now I'm going to give you a look. I'm going to run. I'm going to just let this run and you look at it. You're going to see an image on your screen. It's going to be by batch. You're going to see what percentage they suspended. Now this means, yes, you voted, but it didn't count when it went in the machine because they suspended it. Remember I told you they need a time hack? Well, one of the ways to create extra time is to confuse the machines and have a lot of ballots that need human touch to make them come down. Now, the machine knows what the real vote is, and so do the humans, but they just need to suspend it because they got stuff to do to it. So let's look at adjudication. I'm going to let it roll. Pay attention to the percentage on your screen. You get two numbers. You got a percentage number, which is the percent adjudication. And then on the right-hand side, it tells you how many ballots were bad per what number, like 1 of 100 or 1 of 50. And remember, if it was 1 of 50 and started getting to be worse, like 1 of 49 or 1 of 48, they would stop the machines from working and they would pull it out. Ready? Here we go.
Not even close, man.
It should not be. It should not be lower than 1 out of 50. What you're looking at in Maricopa statistically, and this happened in every one of these swing states, for the very first time in history, adjudication went through the roof. 1 out of 10, 1 out of 9, 1 out of 7, 1 out of 6, 1 out of 8, 1 out of 10, 1 out of 9, 1 out of 8. You see it? Through the roof. So that tells you, on average, it ended up being about 1.6. What does use 1.7 out of every 6 ballots? And there's 2 million, supposedly 89,000 of these. Every 6th ballot they suspended. It means it was held synthetically until somebody allowed it to count. Now, remember, I told you that if you're going to swing an election, you've got to have, number one, you've got to find a way to create a time hack. Number two, outside of that, you've got to find a way that you can operate underneath with extra ballots. Now, first, to answer your question of extra ballots in Maricopa, here's your 2 answers you need to know. I just explained to you how they had mysteriously 110,000 mysterious ballots through a cracking operation disappear. That is a legal ballot voted illegally. However, something they still haven't explained to this day is the ballot printer for Maricopa supposedly sent out about 2.5 million and change printed enveloped ballots to the voting public at large. However, in their own records, they printed for Maricopa 4,089,000 ballots. They had over half more, 56% more ballots than they needed to actually run the election. Now I'm going to see, Keith, on your end, do you see something called PEVL as one of your images?
It's going to take me a moment here.
It's okay. On my end, it's just not showing up, but this is extremely important, and I don't know why it's not showing up on mine. But you'll have
I'm just gonna have to scroll through the zip file here. Any particular?
It will.
I'll keep looking.
It'll probably be batch cadence file.
Okay, I got some batch cadence stuff.
Yeah, if you click on batch cadence, you'll have 3 sample files on it. Do you have one in 2 images at the end or 1? Just with those
stenography or steganography?
Well, maybe stenography. It might be there. You're looking for something that basically says PEVL, PEVL, which is the. Let me see if I can find it a different way. I don't know what happened between our transfers with the program, but here you go. Maybe I can find it this way. Here we go. Ready? I'm going to show you this here. I found it on mine. There you go. Okay. We'll use this. So Maricopa said it had 2 million, that it printed 2,579,400 ballots. However, in their printing files, for some reason, in their printing files, we discovered that they printed 4,089,000. Now I'm going to show you the last I told you, you need to suspend ballots to get a time hack. They said they need 10 extra days to handle all the ballots because there were so many. You need to have an abundance of ballots that you can use. And then we're going to go to Eve, that how could they know what's going on at any time? So let's look at this little thing called fungibility, because if you're going to put in a ballot to have all these 1, you got to have a voter to tie it to. Here are the exact numbers. They supposedly have 2,579,400 voters. However, they have 284,300 at any one time that are extra weight, period, at any one time. And this is where they get those extra voters from. And so we know that they're carrying hundreds of thousands of people that shouldn't be there. So they do this nifty trick. For the 2020 election, they took those inactive people, they inserted them as a vote, but now they got to make it like they're not there. Okay. And so they did a very interesting thing. They started scrubbing the books. And here's what it looks like in scrubbing the books. Basically, we went back and we audited for years. What's the average rate they get rid of bad voters? And it's about 0.25% per month. Here's what it really looked like in Maricopa. Look at the bottom right-hand percent. Immediately following the election, all of their expunge rate of supposedly active voters that just voted goes through the roof. In most cases, it's hundreds of percent higher than they normally do. This is them scrubbing voters on the roll. So and they knew it was coming, so they let them vote. They knew they were bad. They let them vote, and then they got them off the books. Now, another way to tell this is we look for the right person. We look for their names and information to see if they're right. Now I'll show you a quick glimpse by county of this fungibility. You are looking at how many were just non-existent people and how many people we couldn't even match to a phone bill. Here's kind of a quick look by batch on the screen. Remember, Donald Trump supposedly lost by 0.5%. As you see these numbers change, look at the left. 7, 8%, 1.3, 1.7, 2.2. In vast margins over the margin of the election were people that did not even exist. And some we couldn't even find an electric bill, credit card bill, or anything for. All of the numbers exceed the margin of the election. And see, this is where they do the game to try to make it look close, right? To make it look close, etc. So my last chart. So if you're going to do this, I told you, you need time. You got to create a time hack. You got to create a fungibility. You've now learned that the voting rolls are the fungibility, etc. And then you got to have information in real time. Who's voted, where they voted, and where do you need votes? And basically the way they catch that is, let me show you Maricopa. I'll show it to you in this, and then I'm going to go to my screen where I have it enlarged. Basically what you're looking at here is this is the election and its cadence. Now I'm going to switch to a particular view so I can take you through it. This is their machines reporting how many ballots they processed on what machine. Nobody's ever edited this way. On what machine at each time. Hang on. Well, there we go. At any one time. So here it is on my screen. You're able to see it. And I'll be able to chop it up for you here in a minute. Basically, you are looking at the election. So I'm going to zoom it up, and I'm going to show you how to read the bottom of the screen. Okay? So you see the dates here. We can see the date every ballot came in right here. Now, as we look at the charts, blue is Biden and the orange is Trump. So you're looking at it here. What you can see is as they're using their tabulation machines, they processed in this batch on October 20th, they processed 116,292 ballots. The next day, they processed 123,512. The next day, they processed 144,265. So you can see they had one little batch here at only 2,992 ballots processed. So we're looking at the rhythm of what the machines can do, okay? And their max that they maxed out is almost at 145,000. So we now know what the machines can do. And at this time, they're using all 10 tabulation machines. Now, the dotted line is election day, and then they needed 10 extra days. So let's take a look at these 10 extra days. Well, they ran 89,000 ballots, then 38,000, then 137,000, 103, and then they ran 7,500, none. They ran 5,000, 5,000, 13,000, and 2,000. Now, what you need to know about this that's really kind of a complicated issue here is when I showed you all these numbers in the beginning, they were using 10 tally machines. Now, they told you we're overburdened and we can't run all the ballots. So we need 10 extra days. Well, in the 10 days they scanned ballots, for some reason they couldn't scan 145,000 a day like they could. It was very small. But we also found out they only used 2 of their scanners. Well, if they were overburdened, why didn't they use all 10? And basically what you need to understand on the final numbers at the end of the day, on November 20th, when they certified the election, when Ducey certified, if you look at it, they only had 1,973,356 ballots counted. But yet they certified 2,089,563 on the 20th and the 30th. But here's a really weird thing. On December 8th and 9th, they processed about 140,000 ballots. Why would they process after the election about 140,000 ballots when they've already called the election? And here's the kicker. Well, they did that because they made up the number. They never had it. They played a con on us. And by the way, everybody that walked in Maricopa on election day in 2020, they basically threw your ballot away and they made the numbers work. And that's what they were running in on December 8th and 9th to make the numbers work. And by the way, they still screwed it up because somebody wasn't following the math and they were still off about 1,812 ballots. Oh, by the way, they were off the wrong direction. They went over 1,812 ballots because when you do something this big, it's very hard to take control of. And those are the real numbers that now we fight the left, but it is the Republicans that made sure you didn't see this. And I haven't even touched the tip of the iceberg of everything we can show you about what happened. And here's what you need to know. When you, like they said, oh, we had all these votes missing. There was no images, no nothing. And we fight and fight and fight. They're going to get arrested. They're subpoenaed. They are going to get arrested for not complying. Then we magically get this one drive. And they say, well, you didn't ask for archive. They said they archived it. They didn't delete it. Well, the one interesting thing about that archive file, it's not in the right format. It's not in the format of the election management system. It's not in the format of the machines, not at all. And every one of them were modified, and they themselves can't even confirm they even went through the machines. And that's what you're seeing appear on December 8th and 9th. Remember, it's to beat the Electoral College. They were inserting them as fast as they can after the fact. So in case it got to the end, they were hoping they could hide it. And this is why the Arizona audit was so important. And this is why I'm the only person in American history that has looked at, personally, I've looked at in excess of 2 million ballots, 189 million voted ovals, I created all this technology to audit it a different way. And here's the big deal. See, when they keep on telling you it's the machines, you never see the personnel involved. But I'm telling you, folks, it's not the machine, because the machine responds to what the program, the software tells us. So it's people, paper, and programs. And that's what they try to hide, because it takes all this coordination to do it. Now, when you blame it on the machine, they can say, by the way, they can say it was an accident. It was a boo-boo, just like, Hillary losing her emails. When you blame it on the machine, there's nobody to prosecute. Now, here's an interesting twist.
Damn.
When it comes to the machines and the Election Assistant Commission, and you look at all the rules for the machines, you read a very interesting point. If you focus on the machines and you focus on that, their contracts say all of the standards for security, all of the standards for operating are 100% voluntary. And so there will never be a conviction on the machines. And that's why the psychological operation is for people. The machines change your vote. Folks, here's the deal. When you prove it in paper, this is why it's so dangerous. You show, because even to have that paper exist, it took a human. So you now lift it from a machine boo-boo, which it wasn't, because machines only follow software directions. And now when you put it in physical paper, the reason they don't want you to see this is because every single piece of physical paper, when proven to have been done this way, is a federal offense. And that sends them to prison. That's why they did this con job of numbers changing on the screen. It was never real. They did that on purpose. So you saw numbers change on the machine. That's not true. And I'll show you this. Ready? And we'll use this. Ready? See this here? I'm clicking a button. Now that's on the screen, but I'm doing it. Software program that we're communicating with this does it, right? Right here. See that? But what does it take? It took a piece of software, a program, and it took me as a human clicking this button to do it. They have to stay away from that. But what they did on the little ticker tape coming across the television screens with all these people that have never audited in their lives, don't know what's going on. I saw them switch the vote. It's the machines. Well, remember I just showed you it took me to do it? For that number even to reach the screen, it means somebody had to reveal it. And television stations alone, there's 5 people between that clip to confirm it before it ever hits the screen. And also, by the way, that number on the screen is done by surveying precincts, and it's predominantly 3,000 college and high school students that call, get the information, they enter it in, they can make mistakes. All of that was a con job for everybody to say, swap the votes, it was the machines. It never was. It was 100% people, paper, and programs.
Oh boy.
And I know that's a lot, but
I'm just, boy. Okay, I know Eve probably wants to chime in here. I will say I have been scribbling down. I have at least a dozen questions here.
I got a device here that's not connected that I don't know if you can see. I can see. There we go. Eve, are you there? Listen, we got to unmute.
Oh, my bad. Let's go here. Got it. She's well.
There. I muted myself earlier because it was feed time for the dog.
Sorry, Eve. Eve, all I can do is show them physical facts. Now it's time to show them the most important part of the confirmation they need is, well, how do they monitor all this in real time to make it happen?
Well, and listen, and this is all scary. And like Jovan and I have been sitting on this information for years now, Jovan, right? And I'll tell you, sometimes if I didn't have a phone to pick up and to talk to him, I think I would have probably gone completely nuts.
Wait. I can confirm that because sometimes, and it happens in this business, folks, this is our country. And when you realize every problem we have, little boys getting their wieners cut off, and now they're a little girl cutting their boobies off, and teaching kindergarten students who are 3-year-old about all the stuff your parents, if they'd have taught you that, you'd go whip their teacher's ass. All of the breaks we have, from the illegals to the inflation to everything that's going on, it 100% comes back to your ballot. And this work, when you see it in real time, by the way, these numbers aren't ours. All we do is look at the very information they submitted, do an audit, look at it a different way that had to be created and go, wait, none of this matches. And I'm telling you, on Eve's part, it can get very despondent when you realize how big this is. And many times we've had a talk, and I've just had to talk her down because she just wants to cry. And I'm going to tell you too, I've had a good cry myself over it. Sorry, Eve, go ahead.
Oh, no, that's fine. Yeah, so let's get into a little of where this took us. And may I share that the information that came out of Kentucky, what he was talking about that 11111 was very interesting, because they handed over 25 precincts that it was about 7,500 ballots. And after they had counted them, their anomalies were very odd in that it would be a ballot counted but not present, ballot counted but not present, ballot counted but not present. And out of 25 precincts, there were 6 precincts like this. And it was always the same thing. It was always a straight party ticket. And I know it's 6 of 25. And I think that's probably why they kind of got stopped in their tracks there. But when you see what Jovan just presented, it is very much in line. I'm not saying that confirms anything, but it is certainly evidentiary that it is in line with what they also saw in Maricopa. So if I can share a little bit, because the book, there are 3 quotes, if you wouldn't mind. And these, I'm yanking these from the books, because once we get into this discussion, I think that you're all going to appreciate what the significance of this is. But one comes from economist Stephen Landsberg. He wrote an opinion piece in the Wall Street Journal. And this is a quote from Steve. He says, imagine a future presidential election in which the incumbent refuses to concede and enlist the full power of the federal government to overturn the apparent democratic outcome. Now imagine that the election in question is actually run by a federal agency or some nationwide quasi-governmental authority charged with collecting and aggregating the results from all 50 states. I don't know about you, but I might worry a bit about the pressure that could be brought to bear on that single authority. Another quote, this is from Federalist 61. This is Alexander Hamilton. Actually, this is a quote from the book, but Alexander Hamilton expresses concern that centralized voting locations would result in an undesirable consolidation of power and influence in populous centers, using Albany, New York as an example. For the benefit of all voters at the inception of the unification of the United States of America, centralized power was a threat to the individual's right to vote. And then, just as an odd, interesting thing, actually, you'll appreciate this because this came from Glenn Beck's podcast from Richard Werner. He said, decentralization is a superior principle when humans are involved because you're giving people a bit more autonomy. They are motivated and they are more motivated, and people on the ground have better information than central planning. Then you get productive business investment. Central planners want more power. What we're about to share with you from this book is how Rush Limbaugh used to always say, you can't hack an American election because there are so many precincts. You would literally have to be in tens of thousands of precincts to be able to do it. Rush was right. However, they have now networked our election system. So that centralized power, we talked about in the Federalist Papers, Stephen Landsberg talks about, and Richard Werner in the banking system talks about, is now the governance of our elections. And it's shocking. It starts with the birth, we're just going to kind of walk through the book. It starts with the birth of the ISAC. And ISAC is an information, the exact, I'll make the page through it. It's an information sharing and analysis center. So after 9/11, you get your Patriot Act, you get the Homeland Security Act, you get Bill Clinton actually prior to this saying, our systems are vulnerable to hacking. We really need the ability to share information across platforms. And so they created the ISAC. So you get the creation of the ISAC. Shortly thereafter, you have 9/11. 9/11 happens. and then we get Homeland Security Act, Patriot Act, and they said, oh my goodness, we have got to share information everywhere. Then they get this is all discovered through, let me just kind of back up a little bit. All of this information that we're talking about, as the Kentucky information came in and what Jovan was working on was coming in, there were a few individuals that I started doing a deep dive into. And one of them spoke at the CISA Cybersecurity Summit in, I forget what year it was, 2018 maybe. Anyway, I was very curious. I wanted to see what this individual had to say, you know, with a quasi-governmental agency on their dime. And I couldn't find it. You had year one there. This was year two, second annual. It was second day. You had year two, day one, year two, day three, but no year two, day two. You had year three. Could not find that day. Looked everywhere you could possibly looked on foreign servers, looked on social media servers, looked for still photos, looked for anything that could be found, could not be found. So that's how I started deep diving into what the heck, what was this person doing? What was he affiliated? Where did this come from? This is where the forensic understanding of what an ISAC is. So the ISACs were born under Clinton. The Patriot Act basically birthed them into everything. And then you get the government and the DHS starting the USCERT, which is basically that's, you know, everything cyber comes out of there. They began what was the Einstein program. Now, the Einstein program was a IDF system. That was a system, a security system that was supposed to be installed on every federal agency computer except the NSA, the FBI. There was another, was CIA, of course. And they were installed to monitor any nefarious activity, any intrusions. IDS is intrusion detection system. It's interesting because in looking at this, after these things began to be developed and installed, suddenly out of nowhere is an endorsement of the system by the World Economic Forum. I thought was kind of an uncanny, interesting little snippet and tidbit.
Let me add one thing, Eve, just real quick for folks, just for you at home. I want you to understand when President Trump said they're after you, not me, he was right. But what you're seeing here that Eve is going through in the book is every single document, agreement, memo, meeting, and executive order they did to pull this off.
I mean, this goes back to a WikiLeaks file is even mentioned in the book as well. I mean, this is fascinating stuff.
And so what they did is they built all of this, but they needed one really big hammer to make this happen. Now, when I tell you the hammer, you'll recognize it. And the hammer was, ready? Russia, Russia, Russia.
Yep.
See, all of the Russia collusion stuff was to set up to basically for them inside the government to say, well, we just got to make sure this will never happen again. Remember they said that? And what they did is that one move with law enforcement thinking they're doing their job. We got to protect it. It was Russian hackers. They're following government advice. All of this monitoring was installed and activated. That was the goal of Russia, Russia, Russia.
If I recall correctly, did it conclude that that Donald Trump was a Russian asset, even though there was no evidence whatsoever that Donald Trump was a Russian asset, but yet then they could then use that report that Obama was able to squeeze out in the remaining hours of his presidency in January of 2017. That's where they called election. I mean, get all this. I'm trying to remember all this from the book. They referred to it as critical infrastructure, right?
That's when they deemed all of this. They did a subtle change. Remember, we don't have federal elections. We have state elections that have a few federal components on it, but each state runs their election. But in the pandemic and other stuff and other things they did in the name of security, they called it critical infrastructure.
And I think that's where you make the point in the book where 2018 then becomes our first federalized election because of this phony report about Trump's Russia connection.
Correct.
That the Obama administration was able to completely take things out of context with General Flynn and so on in December of 2016. It just, I mean, you see stuff like this play out in retrospect. You go back and you look at this and you think, are these people are they evil geniuses, or did stuff just happen to fall into place perfectly for them? Maybe it's a little bit of both.
I don't believe anything fell just. There's not an accident in this. Everything's planned, every single way with what they do, and every move they do is to get to their end game. But it was the only thing that was a happenstance collision, and most people don't know this. 40 years ago. Now, this only ended during the 2020 election. 40 years ago, and some of the same names like the Pelosi's and stuff, the Democrats sued the Republicans saying the Republicans were cheating in the elections. The Republicans, the same rat bastards you know today, you still see they're long in the tooth and need to go. They did what's called a consent decree. Okay, don't sue us, we'll just agree. And what they did is they signed an order saying, we will never sue regarding elections and anything nefarious. And a judge kept that alive for the left and the DC. They kept that alive for 40 years. He passed away. It finally got dropped away too late for the Trump administration go into the second term. And that's why the GOP, because it's been 40 years, so all of these people have been trained. There's no such thing as election fraud. They don't know how to look for it. They don't know how to track it down, because it was an agreement done between the two parties 40 years ago.
Yep. And may I add that we'll jump forward here too. This whole ISAC thing, so they set up this IDS in the federal government, but obviously they saw the power of it. I mean, you're starting to look into every system that there is. It is the brainchild of John Brennan. Surprise, surprise. He had some information on the WikiLeaks dump that showed his fingerprints all over it. But with that vision that they had into the federal systems, they said, what the heck, wouldn't it be great if we could look into the state systems? So they built the MS-ISAC, the multi-state ISAC. And at first, it must not have been something that they offered up for free. But then they said, well, okay, listen, what's most important to any tech company in the world? You know, you play your games on your phone, it's your information, right? The information is more than money. So to get the MS-ISAC built, they said, all you have to do is give us access. We need your architecture of your network, and we need an open port, and you're in. And so they handed it over, and they get and it wasn't a ton of them at first, but like you said, by 2018 you've got them all online, and you've got over 1,000 localities online. Well, once they get that thing, now remember, every single ISAC has to be set up with a charter, and it also has to be set up with a coordinating council, a sector coordinating council. So every single one of these that exists has one of these. So they get to the point in what time would that be? 2016. So Trump gets in there. They have the systems in there. Basically what ends up coming out of Einstein is what is the Albert monitoring system. If anybody's got the book, it's chapter 6 of the book. The Albert monitoring system is installed. It is in place in 2016. Now you'll remember how confident Hillary was, and the whole system was that Hillary was going to win this. And they say that she actually had a meltdown in her hotel room when she didn't win it. I forget how much damage she did to that hotel room, but she tore it up. But I believe that there were about, what was
just
it?
That imagery makes me smile. But
right,
continue.
I think there were 70 monitors in the 2016 election, by 2020, by the 2020 election, we're up to 750. But in between there, they decide that the MS ISAC isn't enough, and they build the EI ISAC, the Election Integrity ISAC. Now, the thing that is really insidious about the Election Integrity ISAC is it has to have a coordinating council, just like all the others have to have a coordinating council. Now, keep in mind, the coordinating council is the one that manages this. Now, and you'll also appreciate this, Keith, being that you're at the Blaze. These are all public-private partnerships.
There we go.
These are quasi-governmental agencies that are run by private individuals, but they're managed under the umbrella of the Department of Homeland Security. So they've got layers of FOIA protection. They've got layers of legal protection. And when push comes to shove, this is who, once they sign their contracts at your state level, once they've signed that MS ISAC and the EI ISAC contract, they have handed the governance of your elections to these sector coordinating councils. Now, remember, too, and I'm going to read you the members of this here in 1 second.
I want to show, let me show one thing. It'll help people at home understand some of the techno jargon, if I can, Eve.
Sure.
If that would help. A few things, folks at home. Here's what you need to know. The government had remote buildings where they had plausible deniability contractors working, many of them international, not even American citizens, all in the name of security, watching every number happen. That's the key. You got to be able to watch every number happen. And so by using the stuff that they set up, getting it ready for what they were going to do, they sat back and watched everything happen. Now I'm going to relate this to you in real time. If you remember the Arizona audit, the Board of Supervisors was going to have to go to jail because they wouldn't turn over the router and the Splunk log. We got all the way to the point of them going to be arrested. Then the GOP, the attorney for the GOP in Maricopa, let them off. Now, to this day, we still don't have the routers or the Splunk logs. They brought in a special investigator from the government, said, well, I guess there aren't any, which is impossible. I want to remind you, they had 30,000 anonymous incursions into the election management software. What that means is 30,000 times they had outside sources looking in to understand where the numbers were in Maricopa and what they actually needed to make it work out the way they had. Now, if they turn over the router and the Splunk logs, we would be able to see, okay, which facility was it, et cetera. That's why it's the death knell they couldn't do it. Now, they did an interesting trick. Under all of this, we've got to protect you that they set up in Russia, they set that connection in the sheriff's office. And they took the election management software for the first time in history, and they actually said, well, we needed colo space, meaning co-location. They did it with the sheriff. Now, why did they do that? Because when they knew if it was going to be dug in and we're going to do forensics, we're looking for that exact information. And for the first time, it wasn't on the county's true election servers. It was in the sheriff's department. And the sheriff could refuse access by saying, nope, you'll see all our ongoing investigations, people and witness protection. We don't have to turn it over. Now, folks, in your life, I want to just relate this in your life. You might work very hard to protect yourself, okay, to keep your information get out. But basically, folks, we live in what's called a panopticon, which is basically a prison where you get minimal guards that can look at everything. I want to show you this just real quick. You're looking at a video, and we're going to look at apps you have on your phone. See, it's not about the one you turn off. It's about the company that agreed. So these are all the apps and a visualization of how they connect in what's called a panopticon. If we were to click on one app, and we're clicking on one app here that says has 5 million or 50 million users. So that has 50 million users. These are, just in this free music player you may use, it's got 6 back doors. that are already there. You may have turned it off on Google, and that 6 now opens another 200 back doors. All of this connects. If you just choose one of those and they go to that 200 back doors, it's now going to open another 30 back doors. All of this is interconnected to every one of us. You almost, and you see this one here connects to over 3,000 back doors. All of it's inherently built into the system where they know everything about us at any one point in time. Nobody reads the install, nobody does whatever, and this is how our government is managing us. And it's a model of a prison you can look up called a panopticon, and we're in it.
Yes.
Thanks for the reassurance, Jovan. Well, may I interject? When this was going on, again, the discovery of the Albert monitoring system happened while they were out in Maricopa, and I found the information regarding the FOIA protections, the legal protections, the liability protections. They are multi-layered. But again, these are coordinating councils that run this. As you're talking about Splunk, the IT ISAC, you have the IT ISAC, the MS ISAC, the EI ISAC. The IT ISAC Sector Coordinating Council includes Splunk. This is the list. It's Amazon Web Services, CIS, CrowdStrike, Vostrom, there's your Rodney Jaffe, Newstar, there's Rodney Jaffe again, the guy that we'll get to him later, but your Cyber Threat Alliance, Dell, your IT ISAC is a member of this, McAfee, Microsoft, SafeNet Government Solutions, Splunk, and Unisys. They have the governance of any of the IT systems in the ISAC programs. So then back to the the EISCC. These are your Election Integrity Coordinating Council. Their members that told you needed 10 more days of counting, and the members that say, don't get worked up. This is gonna be a difficult election because all these mail-in ballots. These are your EISCC members. The Associated Press, BPRO, Clear Ballot Group, Crosscheck, Democracy Live, Democracy Works, DemTech Voting Solutions, Dominion Voting Systems, ElecTech Election Services, Election Systems and Software, you'll recognize that as ES&S, Election Registration Information Center, you'll recognize that as ERIC, Everyone Counts, Hart InterCivic, Microvote Central Corp, PCC Technology Inc., ProVNV, Runback Election Services, there's your printer, Cital, there's your vote aggregator, SLI Compliance, Smartmatic, there's some machines and software, 10X Software Solutions, Unisys Voting Solutions, Votech, Votum, and VR Systems. They have the legal authority to manage all of the election. Period. That's it. And I mean, that's one of the things that probably gets me fired up more than anything. But John Brennan this is his brainchild. He went to to the analysis. What was the thing called? The Analysis Corp. Once he left the White House, he was at the Analysis Corp and INSA. And while he was there, so this is the thing that was really of a curiosity to me. It's like, okay, you've got all of this vision into the system. Is it locked down? Do we trust these guys? Or is this someone where you've got eyes in? Well, while John Brennan is at the Analysis Corp, he's caught red-handed spying on Obama, Hillary Clinton, and the McCain campaigns. So he's already using all of this information, and he's in the middle of campaigns. Later on, he's caught using the system inside the federal government to spy on Dianne Feinstein. Says, that wasn't me. I didn't do it. Later on in congressional testimony, he says, oops, yeah, actually, yeah, I did it. Then we get the Fusion Center. The Fusion Center. Now, another person, can we talk about the colonel that kind of gave some information? He's in the book, Colonel John Mills. Colonel John Mills, very, very interesting guy, former member of the National Security Council. He gives a lot of fascinating information in this book. The fusion centers are where the information, so when you've got your balance being tabulated and the data being sent to the federal government, basically, to watch, it doesn't need to be there, but for some reason it's sent there, right? It doesn't need to leave your county. And once it goes to your county, it doesn't really need to leave the Secretary of State, but it goes to New York and it goes through all these different agencies, all these different fusion centers. And you've got the fusion center set up with, how do I want to talk about the fusion centers, Jovan? They're the nodes. They're the nodes of the information.
Think of the old days of a switchboard operator where they're really connecting people in between. Well, think of a virtual connection center that sees everything coming into the matrix. And they created this special centers in the name of security and protecting us, that if they want to peek in, it's not only looking at everything. If they wanted to look down to a state, to a county, to an exact precinct, they can see everything happening in real time at every moment. Remember, that's the third leg. You got to have powerful data so you don't screw up. This is the mechanism that allows it to do it, all in the name of security, and all perfected under the Russia hoax. Because what are you going to be, a sheriff when people in the government come, even, and it happened during Trump's government and stuff, and come, well, I'm with, the Homeland Security and whatever, and we're worried about elections. We need you to put this software on. We're going to help you make sure there's no bad Russians. What these people do, right? They're in their own counties, stuck that software on it. Boom, they're in.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and the fusion centers, so they're another quasi-governmental agency. They're privately run in your localities. They've got your sheriffs in there. They've got your, other officials from your state governments in there. But then they've got the feds in there. You got FBI in there, CIA, so on and so forth. Now, remember.
And foreign operatives and suppliers. They have foreign people providing some of these functions in it. So it's further plausible deniability.
Yeah. And what's interesting is like, okay, trust but verify, right? Let's do the Reagan thing. Let's just assume these are very good places and they're going to look after us. Well, if you look into the history of fusion centers, you've got, concern from the very inception. I think it's chapter 12 talks about the fusion centers. But they're used as hotbeds of local spying from the very beginning. You remember Joe the plumber? They spied on Joe the plumber when he ran for a House seat. I believe I think it was the analysis corps, when they spied on Obama, Hillary, and the McCain campaigns, they used a fusion center there as well. Now, what's interesting is after all the Russia stuff comes out, in that testimony, you get some information about this whole Rodney Jaffe thing and the project he had going down in Georgia Tech. There's a project they've got going on called the EA project. The EA project is a DARPA project that, if you dig into that, there is a project where they're working on decrypting packets of web information in mass quantities. And if you look into, if you do some forensics on what is there to decrypt in web traffic, there's really only the payload is the only encrypted part of web traffic. Well, in congressional testimony, the head of DARPA basically says, we were not only successful, but we handed this over to the Georgia Bureau of Investigation. We were able to use it, and we got Guccifer, some really horrible hackers using this. So basically what we learned from that is our federal government can decrypt information that's normally encrypted. They did use it, and they handed it over to states and localities in fusion centers. Now, do we know that they use it in elections? We don't know that for a fact. However, we know the capability is there. And when you're running every single piece of election information through fusion centers, do you trust that federal agents, local agents, all that are represented by unions, and the unions all endorse candidates. Do you really think they're all sitting there with their eyes covered, say, I really don't want to know what's going on here? Now you have the information that Jovan presented. Oh, wait.
Well, I'll give you a good example. If you were to look at this, and we just went that this is Maricopa, folks, and it's supposed to be mail-in ballots, and it's supposed to be to not exceed 84.13%. But you see District 1 failed. It only had 76%. This is how they know what came in first. That's the mail-in. What came in second, that's the hand fold. What came in third, that's the no fold. And so what they didn't have on the front end, they make up on the back end. These are why these numbers work this way.
Oh my goodness. Yes.
Well, and I think one of the things that is, there's so much egregious to this, but that Albert monitoring system, that IDS system, it took a bit of work to find out what runs that system. There was some ideas, went down some rabbit holes, but the absolute hardcore facts is that system is run by CrowdStrike Falcon. CrowdStrike Falcon, if you remember the DNC hack and all of that, that now in hindsight has been proven to be absolutely fabricated, who was sitting in the middle of that whole hack job was CrowdStrike Falcon. Who's the head of CrowdStrike Falcon? Sean Henry. Sean Henry is the former executive assistant director of FBI Cyber, leaves FBI Cyber, and within weeks, perhaps it was, I'd have to look exactly, becomes the president of CrowdStrike Services.
Folks, I want you to remember here in the book, this is not opinion. Everything is citations. Just like when we look at this, it's what they told us they should have had, but what they really had when it comes to the book, it's incredible citations. Eve is an incredible deep researcher. So you can look it up yourself. This is not opinion. We're not speaking out of turn. We're not even making accusations or anything. You read the documents, the very documents, executive orders, agreements, memos, emails, meetings, transcriptions of meetings that our own government and this public-private partnership did. And you're reading it chronologically up to the date they pulled the trigger, bigger than they ever had before. And that's why it's counting down the chaos. You can audit it. You can do it yourself. But I can tell you right now, even in our work for Maricopa, we went back 16 years, not just Maricopa 2020. We went back and looked at data from 16 years. And we found out they'd been perfecting this and doing it for a long time. One of the first people to benefit from it was Barack Obama. It is what put him in office the second time, and how they learned the actual Sharpie trick was from previous elections. The first election was Barack Obama. They were testing it, and then they were able to perfect it with paper and forcing people to use it. Like I told you, in all the election centers in Maricopa, you couldn't use a pen. They told you couldn't use a pen, and they only supplied Sharpies. This is a very sophisticated operation that's gone on for a long time.
That I guess what they felt that in 2016 they didn't need to make fully operational, and somehow.
Well, no, I
Trump
had
snuck
this.
in?
I know it's interesting that you say that. That was the same exact question President Trump asked me. I got a call to go sit down with President Trump and talk about all our findings and everything else. And I did this just a few months back. And I kind of show him all the things you've seen here in much detail. And then he looked at me and said, well, Jovan, how did I get elected in 2016 then? And I said, sir, what happened is when Hillary says they stole the election, I would translate that, we had the election stolen and you stole it from me. And I told President Trump, I said, sir, what you did is you activated people. You go back to these inactive people. There are inactive people everywhere, right, that don't regularly vote. Besides all the dead ones in the use. So there's a lot of people that just don't vote, say to hell with it. My vote doesn't count. And by the way, I'm seeing in chat people say, don't vote, it doesn't matter. Let me help you out. At least be authentic. If you believe don't vote, it doesn't matter, to hell with it. I want you to do two things for me. I want you to go register as a Democrat, so at least you're authentic. And I want you to begin to learn Mandarin Chinese. So you will fit in in the near future with the government you're not voting for, but will get by not voting. And that's why I told President Trump, here's what happened. People saw you were real. And folks, I can tell you, President Trump, what you see on screen, down to earth, simple guy is what he is. He never asked, well, tell me, how do I get elected, or how, which other politicians do. He never even asked that. He says, how are we going to protect the people? What can we do now? What can we do when I'm in? And then he said, well, how in the hell did I win 2016? And I said, sir, you got people motivated. Yeah. You were the linchpin that got them off their butt as couch potatoes and say, I'm in. Finally, I got somebody I can vote for. And what happened is so many people did that, it overwhelmed their, remember I told you at the very beginning, they need a tight race. They need to make it look like it was a hard fought race, because you got to bite it. You got to be able to do it. If it's total BS and too much, you're not going to believe it. So they had that hard fought race for Hillary, but they missed their numbers. So what did they do?
So in other words, there was then high level fraud, much the way there likely was in 2020 in places like Arizona, Wisconsin.
Correct, 100%.
Georgia,
I can show you those
Nevada,
numbers.
Pennsylvania. It's just that they were overwhelmed with legitimate votes for Trump, is what you're saying.
Right. People walked in and legitimate Trumps did it, or votes did it, and it kind of overwhelmed the system. And so to get to where they could really pull this off, remember, it's the first time in the world that they had mail-in ballots and still away, and you can't watch the elections because you're too close. And they needed the pandemic to do it. And all the things they rigged from the pandemic, think about this, Maricopa, 748 precincts, but they've magically chosen 200 places you can go in that will be free from COVID, and you can walk in there because they can't restrict you. Well, COVID's gone, but now you permanently get to go to those 200 places versus 748. That's how they do the wash. And so the way we're going to overcome this for 2024 is you got to have voting parties. You got to get people in, you got to go out. There's nothing left we can do except get people to vote. And just like in chat, people saying, I'm not going to vote, then you're throwing our country under the bus. You better vote more than ever. We've been told not to talk politics and religion. It was a con game. And it always has been a con game. But let me tell you one thing about stealing elections. If you can take an election that people know somebody else won, and then you can penalize people for talking about it. You can make them shut up. You can make them afraid they're going to lose their job. And you can do the coup de grace. What is it? Oh, I ain't going to vote anymore. Shit, my ballot doesn't mean stuff. Let me tell you what. If you can rig one election, and you can take a weak mind that's not strong to believe that, you don't have to rig another one, because those people already took themselves out. Yeah. That's why we can't let this happen.
So I've got a ton of questions here. Eve, did you have something there?
Just a couple things on these topics real quick. I've got some numbers here. The 2016 Trump v. Clinton election, there were only 14 Albert monitors. I thought there were 70 or 14. 2017, they had 25. By 2018, there were 135 Albert monitors in place. 2018 had the highest turnout in almost 100 years. So now keep that in mind, because like Jovan just said, Trump had the numbers turnout, right, in 2016. So they had to beat the turnout. 2018, with 135 Albert monitors, they get the highest turnout in 100 years. In 2020, we have 751 Albert monitors out in use. They break the record again, another record turnout, 81 million votes for the dementia patient. And then in 2022, that was supposed to be a red wave that never was, there were 900 Albert monitors deployed and in use. And we need to talk about this at some point. We'll take your questions, but
absolutely. By the way, folks, you're listening to Eve DeBita, who is the deep forensic researcher that dug this stuff up, and we worked together to bring this book. But for her protection, you're just not seeing her face.
Yes, thank you very much. Glenn Beck, okay, in the Kerry Lake SCOTUS case, Glenn Beck did a special. And one thing, and I notified you of this right away, Keith, I was like, you all have everything in front of you. there was a man, what Glenn Cyber guy called a man in the middle tool that was left inside the election management system. He said, I don't understand why you basically have the keys to the system sitting outside the door. And when you understand that you've got the system wide open. Now, keep in mind, for all those people say the machines flip the votes and the machines flip the votes, and somebody had divulged that there's this FirstNet system, which that's true. There is the system called FirstNet, but keep in mind that this FirstNet system that they send all this information back and forth on is basically a closed. It's a closed. What's the kind of connection?
It's a closed loop connection that does it. You see stuff, but it's not actually what affects what's going on here, but it does exist.
Correct. So you've got to understand who's in that. Well, we know who's in it. There's a man in the middle tool there. Who is that man in the middle tool for? I present to you, and Jovan did earlier, the Splunk logs in Maricopa show you exactly who this is. We basically know, and we can infer who it is. We can't say everything that Jovan and I like to say likes to be absolute fact, but putting the evidence together in what the system is, what the access is, who's in the system, I think we know who the keys are for.
Yes, it's the Splunk logs and the routers that give us the map to the man in the middle to prove this. And now you understand why they fought it. Now you understand why they tried to assassinate me and others. And this is horrific, but we can overcome it at this moment in time because our eyes are open. You got to speak fact. Space Force is not coming to save your ass. All right. Q is just a number in the alphabet. There are no super hyper digital ballots that we got it all. Just wait. And he's going to be back in and wait. Oh, I know it's 4 years later, but it's just another test. Knock it off. It is what it is. And we are at war. And we have to fight this with truth and conviction. And we've got to get our friends and families to vote and get out and do this together. Have your eyes open and understand how this works. This is what I basically teach on my Rumble every day.
And if I may, too, before we get into the questions, all of this was put into play with executive orders. And when you understand, and they were from Clinton era through Obama era, the very interesting thing is the last executive order was signed by Donald Trump. Now, all the people in that kind of Q realm thought, oh my goodness, like Jovan said, that, they're going to come and they're going to save us and look what they can do. It's like, no, that executive order was the one that put the feds into the system to watch everything they wanted at any time.
Because he's doing, as a president, just like anything else, he's listening to his advisors as his people. He has to trust his advisors. They're rhinos. They're all part of the system, and they walk them down a path. Mr. President, this is the right thing to do, and boom.
Yeah, and his back was against a wall because, they had said that he was a Russian asset. You'd better sign this, and so, of course, he's going to sign it. When Joe Biden comes in, he rescinds every single executive order ever signed by Donald J. Trump except that order. Mm-hmm. And now I will tell you, I was just digging a little bit the other day. There is another executive order signed by Biden, which appears to, and again, I have to get into a little deeper, but it appears to have taken away the necessity to declare an emergency on critical infrastructure. It appears to what it does now is, as long as you're a tech company with a contract with the federal government, that the feds are able to monitor anything that you're basically transmitting.
That's right.
Yep.
So you mentioned earlier, Jovan, you showed how there in Arizona they were scrubbing the voter rolls after the damage was done.
Correct.
So I guess is the influx of illegals that we're seeing now, because another thing that you point out that's a key ingredient is you need these extra ballots.
Correct.
And so I guess a light bulb kind of went off in my head the other day where, and I'm hoping you can either confirm or deny that, but is that not part of the plan, is to leave the border wide open? You register people to vote. And something that a lady said on my day job, Pat Gray Unleashed, we played a clip and she was looking out for voter fraud, and she was talking about the federal involvement in getting them, like maybe the states can't ask. I don't know exactly. I forgot what the clip, but
I'll give you the mechanics of it, because they're very
please.
sneaky. They're very sneaky about it. I pointed this out as we got into the election that Maricopa, Arizona, has a very unique loophole in their voting. They say if you are not a citizen of the United States, and remember, that's supposed to be by our Constitution, us and voting here. They say, we don't want you voting for mayor. We don't want you voting for a police chief or whatever, because that wouldn't be fair. But we want to give you the right to vote, so you can only vote for president and senators. Now, that's on the books, and they do it. The second part of what people don't understand is the master harvesting program that's going on. Like, and if you look at a few things that the Democrats tried to do, and I have to stop using Democrats. I'm just going to say the freaking uniparty, okay? Because we don't have two parties. And now you're either American or you're not. That's all there is to it. What they did is they merged driver's license to the program called Motor Voter. Now,
Motor Voter, yeah.
When you come into the United States, a few things happens. When you break our laws and break across our border, what they do is they get you to do a few things. You sign a piece of paper that says, okay, yeah, I broke in and I promise to come back for a court appearance. But they don't do that, right? Another piece of paper you sign at the same time you sign is you sign an agreement that if you're here to work, like all of them say, I'm here to work, that says you promise if that you work in the United States of America that you will pay taxes. So you write, I promise. And then our government, ready for this, issues them a Social Security number. Now, these illegals, if they get a job that actually takes out Social Security, that goes into a kitty. Most of those people file no tax returns. That kitty now exceeds $1 trillion. It's dark money. They know it. And they give these illegals a uniform address to get their ballots at. One address, 10,000 people. Well, when they enact mail-in balloting, all of those 10,000 illegals at this one address, they all get a mail-in ballot. But that illegal is not there.
Mm-hmm, yeah,
and that is how they get legal ballots to vote illegally. And oh, by the way,
mm-hmm.
and this is why they're doing it, trying to say 16-year-olds need to pre-register to vote, or 17-year-olds, even though you can't vote till you're 18. Here's two things. You cannot ask somebody if they're a citizen. They've made it a no-no and finable. And in those bills that they were doing, HR 1 and HR 2, if you ask somebody their age, it's against the law. You're fined $10,000. And so what they do, the two qualified questions that you ask to know if they are even legal to vote, they have made that illegal, and you cannot ask. And by the way,
Absolutely.
In Maricopa, they were paying people $1,000 a ballot to give them their ballot unvoted. Or you have homes, right? This is the incredible work of Liz Harris, which they rejected and didn't want in, and they fought and sued over. Because you can go to a home and you'll find 52 people at a home. And out of those 52 people, the man and wife live there 35 years. They don't know who the hell these other people are. They've been trying for 10 years to get them off, but they don't take them off. But the mailman still drops them off. And most of them, for some reason, get picked up. The second thing is, forwarding a ballot is illegal, meaning it goes to an address. The mail person can't forward it. That's illegal. You can't forward it. But yet, in Maricopa County, you can have a field, a totally empty field, not even a mail receptacle, but it has an address to it. And you got 2,200 people voting from that address, but yet the mail person, the post person, takes that 6 blocks down the road and drops off those ballots. This is an insertion operation. You can do it right now. If you don't believe me, ladies, if you have gotten married and primarily done two things, moved the county since you got married, and you took your husband's name, go back to your old county where you used to vote and your maiden name, I guarantee you, you're still voting. Next thing is look at apartment buildings or high rises. As soon as the planning commission provisions and address, and they haven't even broke ground, the first thing that starts popping up is voters registered to those addresses. So if it takes 5 years to get that facility done, as people move in, then they just move them to another address, but then it looks like they're a voter that's been there for 5 years and haven't voted. This is part of how they create that fund.
I mean, it's not that they want new voters, they want just new votes via these ballots that are.
This is why they said,
individuals.
Yeah, this is why they say every vote must count. See, the words they choose are so critical. Everything's about words. They don't say every legal vote must count. They say every vote must count. And a lot of these recounts, the way the racket works, when they say we're going to do a recount, they do one of two things. They look at the little gas station tickers from the machines, and if the machine said 1,000 people voted there, they just add up those little ticker tapes. Oh yeah, the numbers are the same. They say it's a recount. Well, that's not a recount. The second part they do is they take the ballots, right? And all they do is run them through a counter. And they'll tell you, we recounted every ballot, the number's the same. What they're not saying is we recounted every piece of paper ballots are printed on, and every piece of paper is accounted for. Keith, have you heard the Bernie Sanders thing a year before the election in 2020? May I show you something? Folks,
Sure,
I want you to pay attention to words. Now, Bernie Sanders, right? Remember, we got an Obama hot swap with Hillary long ago on the convention floor. And then, of course, Hillary took it away from Bernie. But one thing I know about Bernie Sanders is I never saw him on an infomercial for the Psychic Friends Network, ever. He's not supposedly a future seer. I'm going to play for you something that ran in 2020, a week before the election. Now, I happened to be traveling. I think it was in Los Angeles, and I actually saw this real time. And that's how I knew they would do it. I want you to listen to the words carefully, but this is Bernie Sanders before the 2020. How did he hit every point, every state that was going to be contested?
Got the same states, yeah.
Got the states. He even said the time they would stop counting ballots and you would go to bed and President Trump would declare victory.
Well, and remember too, go ahead.
And they needed more time. Everything was hit there. It's always put out there. They always talk about it. They
can't help themselves.
They cannot help themselves.
Okay. The EISEC about 30 days ahead of time said as well, this could take weeks to count. Well, remember who the EISEC was. We went down that list. And may I add as well, with this Albert system, it continued to evolve into Rabbit 5. The thing you have to understand about Rabbit 5 is this thing went to Johns Hopkins, and Johns Hopkins included basically, if you're going to be a member of this now, their own information said that you had to have a system that was AI capable. So now the system runs with AI. Now, the thing that really freaks me out about this, and what Jovan was talking about, this information comes out of Kentucky once again, but for federal elections now in 2024, and this is the federal, they said this is because it's federal, that if you have a provisional voter, a person that comes in, and Jovan can go and tell you about statistics on provisionals, but if somebody comes in and they check in and they're not in the voting system, they'll be handed a provisional ballot. For 2024, for the first time at your e-poll book, you will put all your information into that e-poll book. You'll be handed a ballot. You will vote that ballot. Keep in mind that e-poll book can be reached by this whole IDS system, which now is AI capable. All they have to do is let AI run and find these people that have signed in for provisionals, and that same system has access to the voter registration. How many of those are going to end up landing as legitimate voters? What are the provisional percentages, Jovan, over historically?
The provisional percentages statistically were the highest ever, but they claimed it was low because they had so many voters, meaning they had to stick so many in. a few of the things that happened on provisionals that they did is you had people that really weren't real voting by provisionals, but you had people that were dedicated voters that came in only to find out they weren't registered, therefore they had to vote provisional. A very interesting hook took place specifically in Maricopa. This was a lawsuit that found, now get this, ready? For existing motor voter, not all the illegals they're putting in, but for existing motor voter, they disconnected voter registration from driver's license. Now, why did they do that? Because if you follow the rules like you're supposed to, when you change your address, you go to motor voter, right? And you change it. You're doing what you're supposed to do as a citizen. All of those people that were Republicans that went in and changed their address, they didn't do the update. So when you came in and you checked in, they wouldn't let you vote because they said your information's not correct. You have to vote a provisionals, and those they kicked out.
I'm really worried though. Are you not worried about all these illegals here now that you can't ask for an identification? If they're going to have them put data in at the e-poll book and AI is running this, that we could have an unusual number of provisionals count in 2020.
We will have a massive number of provisionals. I think most of them won't even be provisionals. I think they'll skip the provisionals. Places like Maricopa will give them what's called get this, a platinum ballot, and they will be allowed to vote for president and Senate, and they'll run through as a platinum ballot on the promise that the state will verify their citizenship. And even though tens of thousands did this in 2020, the state went back and did not verify any.
Jovan, can you really quickly go over the condition of the boxes that were turned over to you for the audit, how many there were,
Sure.
and so on?
And so let's just say this is like I tell you, they got to stack in the ballots at the end. Well, they never, what they want to keep you away from is from the physical paper, because that's where the crime occurs. And so basically what they did, all of these boxes of ballots, if you were to look at a box of ballots, inside that box will be approximately 8 batches of ballots. So 8 reams of paper, right? It's about 200 pieces of paper. So it's 8 batches of ballots. Now those ballots are put together in a way that they're separated, and they have a batch card in front of them that says, here's what the vote count is. And they put those 8 batches in there. And then what they're supposed to do is seal that up secure. Well, in Maricopa, there were 1,675 or 77 boxes of ballots. They're all supposed to be taped up and secured. When we got the boxes, which they kept on trying not to give, even to the point that when they wouldn't turn them over, one day they snuck them out of the place because it's supposed to be done under police supervision and our supervision, and they stuck them on a tractor trailer rig and said, come get them, which was totally against the law, right? When we got the boxes, we noticed something really unique. Now, number one, there were only 52 boxes that were sealed shut as required by law, 52 of them. Now, those 52 boxes where everything was in the box properly and in order happened to be the hand-picked boxes by Katie Hobbs and the election supervisors to spot check that the election was run right. So if in case they got an audit, now get this, folks, if in case they got an audit, and the first one they did was like January or February. But if in case they got audited, well, we're going to just look at these 52 boxes. Well, those 52 boxes were sealed properly. And when you look at the numbers in those boxes, mathematically, they match the outcome of the election. Now, on the 1,625 boxes left that we eventually got a hold of, none of them were sealed. None of them were secured. And when you open the boxes, you would have some batches, supposed to be 200 ballots, and there might be 150 in this one, and there might be 80 in this one. But all of the header cards that should have been there had somehow fallen to the very bottom. the badges were there that they're incomplete, and on top of the box were all these ballots just thrown in, all mismatched. It's because that was the ballot inserting operation after the fact. 1,625 boxes in that status.
Are you able to show one of those chain of custody forms?
Yeah, stand by. I will. I'll show you that. Let me pull it up.
While you look for that, let me just ask you, because this book is, I mean, it cannot be overstated of how thorough of a behemoth of information this is a collection of. I mean, it's depressing. It'll make you angry. You'll see the entirety of the plan from start to finish. And like I said, this has been going on for decades. Just a great job with this book. I just wonder if you've calculated it between the two of you, how much time and I hesitate to even ask this, personal fortune have you devoted to this? I mean, this is so important. But
we have thousands and thousands of hours between us.
Yeah.
And just the research part of it.
I can see why you would cry as you're doing this too, by the way.
Yeah. It's horrible. And my contract for Maricopa to do my particular function for the audit, there's only 3 auditors. There was Cyber Ninjas, Cypher, and then my company, Tesla Laboratories. And my contract to do what I did for the state of Arizona was $210,000, about 9 cents a ballot. But in the process of understanding what we were looking at and needing to develop new technologies, we have spent in excess of $2.2 million additional dollars of our own money. And because we have to keep this pristine, it's why I do my locals, Jovan, Hutton, Pulitzer.locals.com, and encourage people to follow me there. Because if you're a supporter, what you are is you're a keeper of this. It cost us in the petabytes of information, because this is 3 petabytes of information. It's like 1,276 times the size of the Library of Congress, if I remember the number correctly. It cost us, just to maintain this in a chain of custody since all this time, and it's been almost 4 years, it cost us $10,000 a month just to maintain this, so we can finally get to the point where, either Donald Trump has to use it to prove that he knew, or it has to be used in the court cases, or it has to be used in the Supreme Court. And in fact, it's history. So it is bleeding us dry. It's what the system does. I can't
imagine. And we played the intro to you at the beginning. And by the way, I just want to make sure, is this accurate? This banner here?
Yes, that's my locals, Jovan, Hutton, Pulitzer.locals.com. And when you can follow me there like any social media, but when you support me there, everything that we do this goes to protecting this evidence. And we are the keepers of it. And that's why we continually stay in audit mode. We're the only people in the world that has this. We're the only people that even has any ballots left from the 2020 election. It's 2 million ballots, but it encompasses over 40 million forensic photos.
We need to talk to Glenn Beck about storing this in his American archive.
Right. Okay, so you're an incredibly unique individual in that you have been incredibly successful. I have no idea what your net worth is. I don't even want you to tell me. What I'm getting at is there are millions of us Americans out here who have seen the fraud, are enraged by the fraud, even fewer that have done something about it. Even fewer that have delved into the actual evidence, and then even fewer still that have the funds, the personal funds, to go and do something about this. So I guess my question off of that is, you're in such a unique position, and God bless you for doing all of this.
Thank you.
Insanely just depressing and difficult and important work, Jovan, and Eve, to you as well. Absolutely. Both of you. Here's you have to be, I think you alluded to it earlier in the conversation. I wasn't necessarily going to bring this up, but I think you alluded to this. You've got to have a level of concern, because for your own safety and your own life, because this is the kind of thing that, as I laid out, how many people are enraged, how many people actually doing something, how many people have the funds to go and actually make a mark and make a splash and trying to convince people that this happened and continues to happen. You obviously are a target because they figured, hey, whoever's enraged about this, we're going to either write them off as kooks. We're either going to silence them into submission. They won't be able to pay their mortgage. They won't be able to put food on the table by going after them, doxing them, doing whatever it takes. And so, but there's you, and I fear and feel that you have obviously made yourself a target. You're a patriot, and I have to ask.
It's very dangerous. I've gone through things like having 6 people jump me to beat the hell out of me. We knew we were in trouble when we first went to Georgia when they were shooting through windows. I had a biological attack that they did at one of the events that affected 12 people. 2 people died. I barely came out of it. I did not think I would survive that. I've had to move my family 3 different times. The actual cost to me is, I was never political before this. I didn't care about it at all. None, 0. But I can tell you right now, if you and I decided to go hang out at a meth house somewhere, Breaking Bad dudes, we'd be in better company than we would be at the people who do these elections and will suffer our nation. We'll find more ethics in it, right?
I bet.
But it has cost me dearly. My current technologies and patents, most people in patent work do 2 or 3 patents, maybe in a lifetime. I do, on an average, 100 a year. I have patents in all 190 countries around the globe. I've always been the golden boy that Google bought my patents or Microsoft bought my patents or whatever. I've been so blackballed that it's nuts. But even one of my new breakthrough technologies, where I was going to, it would be on every single mobile phone out there. My particular part of the transaction would have been about $71 million. Vaporized the moment they saw me on television in Georgia, and it just went away. And that's how it's gone. So it's cost me probably 80, 90 million in doing this for the last 4 years in true cost, hard asset, 2.2. But I'll show you some of the things, because it's the system. It's a whole system. It's left and right. Let me show you one thing here that I think will bespeak this. And this is how you do the physical evidence. So I'm going to go to my I tell people it is very statistically a good chance I will end up suicided or a bullet in my head. And if that means that that's what I did for my country to find this out and to get it out and to get people to talk about it, and I talk about this with my family often, that's the price we paid, and I wouldn't doubt it. Now maybe I've kind of reached the critical mass that it would be hard to do it. They're not going to monitor me, but could they try many, many other things to take me down? Yes, they could. Now, I'll show you something very interesting. We're very thorough at what we do. We look at everything that had never been looked at before. Now, the document on your screen that you are looking at, this is a chain of custody document, okay? And so we're just going to kind of look at this. It basically says, okay, they picked up documents, Paradise Valley, town of, right? And were ballots picked up? Yes. Were there any spoiled? No, right? And it has the security seals and everything else and blah, 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 the time and everything else. And then you have the signatures of, okay, who was at the location, who was the transport staff member, and there has to be 2 of them. Now, if you go down, and this is the receipt. This is the actual place where they count the ballots. And so you see, and nobody has ever audited this before until we did it. And so you're looking at the transfer agent received it. Here's the person, here's the date, here's both security seals. And you got this little thing right here called counts of ballots in the bin. And there were 708. Let me show you something very interesting. And this is what you do when it comes to forensics, and I'll show it to you this way. In forensics and in a true investigation, you don't know what you're dealing with. You just look at everything. And so just like I showed you all the numbers of people, right, working the ballots when they're coming in from October 20th, the whole time we're looking at every single document signed by the county employees. Who signed it? Who did it? So I'm looking at 30 days of work, let's say. And so I can show out of 30 days and hundreds of people, twice somebody forgot to fill in a blank, and twice somebody forgot to sign where they were supposed to sign. Now that's out of 30 days, 2 accidental blanks, 2 accidental miss signatures. Now let me go back to my screen. So what you're looking at is chain of custody. This is all chain of custody before, and they're basically flawless. Let me show you chain of custody on election day, where I told you every ballot was changed. So you're looking at election day. You're looking at ballots were picked up, no spoils, right? You don't need an extra seal. You see the people, but now there's only 1 transport person, not 2. And when it comes to being received,
Wow.
not a single one received, not a single number of ballots. Now, why does this matter? Because it happened on every single batch of election day ballots from over 200 places. Somebody told them, don't sign anything. So 6 people that would normally sign all of a sudden unanimously forget to sign, and accidentally there's no numbers of how many ballots came on that day. And then we find out they changed every one. This is what forensics did. And for all of these, we had to write new programs. That's why it cost us so much. But I'll tell you something even more nefarious. Going back and looking at the envelopes, which was done in 2020, looking for signatures. Well, when 2022 came around and they're doing the same thing for Kerry Lake, and they're checking the registration card against the signature on the 2020 envelopes just to kind of see if they matched, and they started seeing no matches. Well, I notify them, wait a minute, because see, we ingested every signature. So not only did we teach it to read forms, we taught it to recognize every signature that was signed. And I told the GOP and I told the people in Arizona, oh, you know what? That signature that is on that ballot, that's an election worker. And here's how they do it. And I could, because they're on these previous chain of custodies. I said, I need to see all these other ballots because I don't have access to them, all the signatures. And the GOP issued a mandate, do not turn it over to Jovan and his team. And we can prove that election workers that have been contracted were actually signing the mail-in ballots. That's how nasty this is.
Boy, I'm so pissed off right now. So, okay. All right, where to go next here? Let me just ask you this. Obviously, we need to be poll watchers. Obviously, we need to vote.
You need to be, well, let me correct that a little bit.
Okay.
You need to be an educated poll watcher.
Mm-hmm.
The GOP doesn't teach you what to look for. They teach you the 1960 rules of somebody in a Black Panther outfit threatening people. They don't teach you to watch for the hot swap. They don't teach you to watch that a fob gets stuck in a machine. They don't teach you to watch the cards, which can run a resident program on these machines and you not even know it. They don't teach you to recognize when somebody comes in person to vote, which happened for the rejections, happened 33% of the time, was somebody who physically showed up, showed their ID, came in to vote, but they were told, sorry, you already voted. And they're saying, hell no, I didn't vote. That's why I'm here. Every one of those, they gave them a provisional, but they still didn't accept their vote. That was 33% of the instances across the board. But what that actually was, what has to be handled is don't vote your mail-in ballot, walk in with it. Don't tell them you have it. Tell them you're there to vote on election day. Keep that ballot hidden. And if they tell you you haven't voted or that you've already voted, you go, will you double check that? Get the supervisor to double check it. They'll double check it. When you get told the second time, I'm sorry, you've already voted, step away, call your local sheriff, and immediately file a stolen identity report and say, I'm standing here, I caught them, they stole my identity. Sheriff will show up. Now they're going to get the same story. It's Miss Jones, and Miss Jones already voted. Here it is. And at that time, you pull out your mail-in ballot, which you have not opened, and you go, here's my mail-in ballot. I am here today. They said I voted. Somebody stole my identity. We've had to learn new ways to vote, but it's been costly. This is the whole reason we do locals. Here's what they try to do. They try to starve us all out. I didn't know this. I thought, I'll give you an interesting one. We heard Attorney Barr said we investigators look at it, but believe there was not enough fraud to change the outcome of the election. Here's what that means. If you and I found our candidate lost by 100,000 votes and we knew it was crap, and we found 90,000 illegals voting, 90,000. You think we run down to the county returner or the AG and say, look at all these illegal votes. Well, that's 90,000 and the vote was 100,000. You haven't found enough to materially change the outcome of the election. And if you cannot find it on your own without their help, because they are not by law required to help you, you have to find it on your own. They get to kick you to the curb. And this is what's been costing. It has cost us out the wazoo. It's been a constant attack. The only thing that supports this is locals, and I'm glad that people do it and watch locals. We try to give a lot of special reports and education. We teach people to do this. We train people to become true poll certified people. That's at fireaxe.academy, where we teach them to look for the things we've learned. But even just the simple rig of they're forcing people to vote with Sharpies and saying you can't vote with a pen, that's actually against the law. You cannot tell a person what instrument they get to vote for. And we don't have protocols. Like a poll watcher has no protocol that if you come in and they say you've already voted, to get a certified statement from the person to say, no, I didn't, swear to it by legal jurat, which makes it usable in court. But also that person is a poll watcher. They only kind of give them a provisional that looks innocent, but the county doesn't go back and check those. They just throw them away. Your vote never counted. And that's the stuff the GOP does not teach people that we do.
And may I go ahead?
Yeah, I was just gonna real quick, and I'm sure it's a simple answer, but why and by the way, did I do this right as well? Fireaxe.academy.
Yeah, the other one's fireaxe.academy. Thank you very much. That's where we teach people all of the things that the GOP or poll watching doesn't teach you: how to look for it, how to catch it, how to audit for it, etc.
Yeah, that's okay. Fireaxe.academy. You answered with that. You answered my next question. Where do you go to educate yourself for poll watching? And Eve, we'll get right to you. I just want to just tuck this in here. If the Republican Party and Republican candidates are so often the ones that are on the losing end of voter fraud, of election fraud, right? I should say. If that's the case, why are they not more on board? Why are they more of just a wink and a nod, uniparty, rah, rah, rah? It would seem that they would object, no?
Well, let's look at it this way. Number one, I don't believe we have two parties anymore, and we haven't had for a long time. That's why we've gone from billion-dollar allotments and budgets to trillion-dollar allotments and budget. That wouldn't happen if you had politicians that cared about our country and nation. We did discover that in Georgia, they have a quote-unquote finishing school to take liberals and Democrats and teach them to speak Republican and run Republican. That's part of the rig that's going on. It's not just, it's a McCainite school, but the GOP is not going to do anything. The GOP is they have no vested interest in it. Many of them have benefited by it. They're afraid to be called a conspiracy theorist. That's why all this stuff comes out, is to make everybody stand down. Yes. I don't know how much the new GOP will go to it right now. I know that after Donald Trump gets in, he may do stuff. But right now, even in the GOP, and I love Laura and have met her and know her, she's there because she can raise money, not because she knows how election are run or can shut down. But then you also got you've got people that raise $20 million for election integrity, $20 million that say their election integrity out of DC, and we're going to do this. And then as soon as 2022 happened, said, well, we found nothing in 2020, nothing happened. It is a weird money raising thing. And I'm terrified that the people that donate the most are the ones that get to do it. And by the way, bank your ballot, this new stuff that's coming on. And they say, bank your ballot. And they took people and put them in there saying bank your ballot. And I even kind of reprimanded and truly reprimanded President Trump from saying it. Don't you understand? When it said bank your ballot, the only way you can bank it is to get it in advance, which means it's early voting, which means it's mail-in. It's just a different name. But here's the catch. The catch is that if he's going to run for the GOP has control of that stuff, and they control his image. In fact, if you look at most of the donations for President Trump and you look at those emails, you scroll all the way to the bottom, you'll find it's some weird group out there that raises money that's connected to the GOP, but has nothing to do with President Trump, but they use his face plastered all over it. It's a racket from top to bottom.
Well, and I would submit to that as well. When you consider people like Lindsey Graham and Mitch McConnell, who have horrible approval ratings in their home states, these guys benefit from the same system. Like I submit to you that they have to have such a system in order for them to preserve their position. You know, a guy like Mitch McConnell, you know, he's never really been challenged in a primary until Matt Bevin came along. Those two men have no lost love between them. And when Matt Bevin lost his governor's election by 5,000 votes, McConnell was out there saying, you know, he's got his right to, you know, to have his recanvass. He was very careful not to use the word audit or whatever. And after about a week of them starting to really dig into what was happening, from what I understand, McConnell threw him under the bus just that fast.
And then you got to understand institutional regs. If you live in a state where they have open primaries are consistent with the states that have horrible rhinos. And you're wondering, why do we keep on getting this so-called conservative left that always votes with the left? It's because in open primaries in those states, they know it takes a Republican to win. The Republican is really working with the Democrats. The Democrats come over and vote in the open primary and keep that person in office. Open primaries is part of the reg.
Yeah.
But, and again, let me interject this, because there's some things, and solution-wise, this has to bear on this as well. But, you know, you brought up Department of Justice and Attorney General Barr. When you read this book, you begin to realize those guys are part of the system. When you're told, don't look, you know, don't have, you know, we can't have anybody doubting the system. Since now 2008, maybe, it's because they run it. It's because their names and their fingerprints are on this. And, you know, solution-wise, the best thing that anybody can do is remove yourself from any, you know, remove yourself from the federal system. And it depends on where you are. But when COVID hit, they moved everybody into these large voting centers. They eliminated small precincts. And the precinct, the individual precinct, is the security apparatus for we the people to take this back. Now,
we have to have it. 2,000 max is what I recommend, or less if you can get away with it. But they say they can't staff it. BS. We got to get back to precincts 2,000 or less, and we can deal with this.
Absolutely. And I submit, for anybody that says that we can't have that many individual locations, if you like the idea of a centralized voting center, okay, well, isolate the precincts in the building then. You know, don't let the ballots and the scanners cross over. If you want to have your quote unquote voting centers, maintain the precinct, you know, as its entity inside that building. Now, having said that, 2 counties, I believe it was in Washington State, decided to pull this plug. They said, what the heck is this system that we're on, and why do we really need it? And CISA and the feds just about had a meltdown. Small counties out in you know, Washington State, and they spilled the beans, and they said, listen, we don't have the visuals into those counties anymore. It came right out of their own mouths.
That's right.
We can't see them any longer. Well, of course, and you shouldn't. And you know, I know for a fact from people, you know, that I talk to and discuss with, that as people are trying to fix this locally, such as they did, that there's a feeling that it can be fixed from the top. Well, they've spent billions of dollars on this system. There is, you know, get Trump in there, he'll fix it. There is no constitutional apparatus.
Trump, when we learned that a county recorder like Stephen Richter in Maricopa has more power than the president of the United States, it became very sobering what we're dealing with.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. And when you understand that as constitutionally, we have a right in our precincts, in our counties, and our states to run these elections. You have to fight it from the precinct level and from your state and local level. And you got to the easiest way to remove yourself from the system is to pull the damn plug.
Yeah, no, unfortunately, folks, I know I've seen people saying I'm going to vote third party, and you're saying you may have a slim chance. No, remember, they don't have to put the other parties on the ticket. So write in, adjudicate your vote. Third parties just throwing away your vote. You have to just base, unfortunately, as evil as it is, between the two lesser of evils. But Keith, do you remember when the newspapers long time ago wrote about a mail-in ballot fraud? Do you remember when that was? You probably weren't burned then. Do you know the very first mail-in ballot fraud in the United States? Do you know when that was?
Civil War.
That's right. The second election of Abraham Lincoln. You're right. Now, when was the first found box of ballots that said, oops, we just found these votes and now we count them? When was that?
In the back seat of a trunk in a car in Minnesota during the Senate election of, was it Norm Coleman? I think it was. I forget. Anyway, that's my earliest review.
There is that one, but the first one actually was called Box 13. And it was LBJ, and it was
LBJ. The man should have never even been in. Anyway, continue.
That's right. He was running for Senate. He was running for Senate.
Yes.
And literally, his campaign manager went out to West Texas, found a magical box named number 13, which you can find on Wikipedia. And magically, there were 202 ballots in there, which is basically what put him over there. And he became a senator. Now, here's the moral of the story.
Yep.
When they learn how to do it, they always do it, and they never close the holes.
Yeah.
And now you've got technology they couldn't even dreamed of in the 60s.
Correct.
To perpetuate fraud. I want to ask you guys this. As you look ahead from 2020, now as we approach the 2024 election, are there states... Okay, let me back up. I don't want to make this 2020 to 2024. Are there states that you look at where you say, you know what, it seems like they have their crap together? I think that their elections are on the up and up. For me, what comes to mind is the state of Florida got a big wake-up call in 2000, and correct me if I'm wrong, and so that they were the laughingstock in 2000. You had the people looking for the pregnant chads and the hanging chads and stuff. But you know what? Florida's not a place of fraud from my perspective. Correct me if I'm wrong. So it seems like if I'm looking for poster children of states that have their elections on lockdown, Florida comes to mind. Maybe Georgia now. I don't know. Can you help us to? So can
Eve, you want to take first stab at it and answer?
Yeah, Eve, tell us which states we can look at, because a lot of people are watching from all over the country. Can you tell us if there's any states where people can breathe a sigh of relief as they go and vote in November, and then states where there's still trouble?
The answer is no, none. I would elevate the 2 counties in Washington State as very high on the list. I've heard news out of Kentucky, but I'm still not encouraged. Anybody that has the system that is managed by the Election Integrity Sector Coordinating Council, which is everybody, is in a heap of trouble.
Hanging chads is what ushered in the age of the computer and programs where they started learning to this point. Hanging chads had a purpose. And that purpose was to get to complete electronics, which were forbidden before that. And that was the mechanism they used. That was the mechanism they used.
And remember,
paper ballots and counting by hand ever again?
Oh, we should. We should have one-day voting. Paper ballots, and it should be, here's what I would do. And this is exactly what I told President Trump, because he asked me, what would you do to fix it? I'd said one-day voting, a national holiday. I would get rid of the parties. I would get rid of the voter registration. There's close to 30 million under their bat. Throw it all away, every state equally. And here's the deal. You show up on election day. You basically have your ID that shows your residence, and you can show things that prove your residence, your electric bill or whatever. And it shows, you verify that, you are a citizen of age and you get to vote. If we did that in one swoop, the whole system, all these people that are being put
into the ground,
would be just shut down and done. And that's the way, personally, I would do it. There is no state that runs it right. However, America's wagged by 6 states, 6 counties. So you understand the magnitude. There are 3,800 counties in the United States. There are 174,500 or 400 voting precincts. Everything needs to be burnt to the ground and restarted because it is compounded, convoluted code. But it's the same thing. If you understand, we'll get more tax money if we went to a flat tax as you spend it, because you don't just make it and keep it, you spend it, whether it be houses or anything. If we went to a flat tax, then we would have illegals also paying tax because they buy and consume and whatever.
A fair tax.
That's right. A flat fair tax, we would have more tax than ever, period, than we need in the system. But it would require burning down that thing that I think is 80,000 pages now in our tax code or whatever ridiculous number it is. It's the same thing. The bureaucratic mess does it. It's all buried. It's this, it's that, it's junk. And but we can fix this. We, the people, can fix it if you understand what to say. And I'll give you an example. The con in 2020 is they made everybody look at the machines because of that little trick on TV. And then they seeded the one fatal word, fraud. This is fraud. Everybody was guilty of it. That's fraud. Well, here's the rules when it comes to elections. Only the governor, the secretary of state, or the attorney general can declare at an election or during an election that fraud occurred. Outside of that, you have to go through the court process to determine fraud. And so when all these brand new attorneys came in and fraud this and fraud that, and I changed the votes on TV and they used that as evidence file, it threw every case out, and the left planned for it. And that's why they seeded, and you had all these people coming out. That's fraud. I saw it change on TV. All of that stuff, machines. And look at this little F chart, and we saw it insert and swap. Every one of those amplifications and attorneys using it killed every single case.
And so it's probably not accurate to go after companies like Dominion comes to mind. You should say, no, look at who has control of those machines, and that's the federal government.
I've taken a lot of flack because they say, you're a Dominion lover. I said, no, I'm not. Machines run on programs. Right now, yes, we're using machines, but it's programs that make it happen. If you're watching a mobile, it's Androids that's making it happen on whatever you're downloaded. And so I've always said, be very careful about it. So when you say the machine changed the vote, you're lying. And I tell people, I say, have you ever heard of a Dominion voting machine? They go, absolutely. I go, Dominion doesn't make voting machines. They're Dominion election systems. They're software. Now, do you understand the disconnect? And when Dominion sits in front of Congress and says, we don't make machines that connect to the internet, that's not true, and you think they're lying? No, they're telling the truth because they don't make machines. But see, media is part of this. Media and bad actors that get out there, it's the machines. I saw it change this. Look at this curve and whatever. It is all a setup to get you and attorneys to say the wrong thing. Because here's how it works. When you say we gotta literally decertify the election, there's not a path for it. But let me tell you what you can be done. When you can prove an election was maladministered, meaning they just ran it wrong, then there are rules on the book that allows an entire election to be redone. And if that maladministration continues to happen, then it is malfeasance. And when you study maladministration and you find a recurring malfeasance and you can prove malfeasance, then it's what jumps the hurdle to fraud, which is racketeering. But it's all about words and how it's done. And that's how they get every one of us to say the wrong things, amplify the wrong. Remember, attorneys had never fought this stuff before. So they're basically watching TV and people they believe in, it's fraud and it's this, and to change the vote on TV. It was never evidence, never proof. You can't convict the machine.
Well, and may I interject too that with the whole Dominion comment, that these are no longer just companies. These are chartered members of a quasi-governmental
That's right.
group, council that's they have levels
Protected.
of protection. So when you're trying to sue Dominion, you're actually you're after a federal government, quasi-governmental agency. I don't know how that can be done. I don't know where the jurisdiction lies and how that can be done.
Right. So Jovan, there was a glimmer of hope in there. Hey, we could burn the system to the ground, and there's hope there, right?
We can fix this.
What would you tell to the person? Right. And I'm with you. We can fix this. But what would you tell to the person who says, okay, well, if we don't have this November election go our way and the fraud continues to rule the land, then what is going to be left to fix? What would you tell someone as we head into the future?
We have to understand that what you're seeing in the here and now is designed specifically for you to see. These guys are playing way ahead of us and they're planning for it. And so that's why I admonish people that we got to get in the streets and we got to revolt and we got to riot. Well, you got to understand the only reason we have been safe this long is our First Amendment and our Second Amendment.
I was about to say that.
And so, hang on. And so what did they do? They tried to terminate our First Amendment, but it didn't work. We could still overtalk them. But at the second time, we have our Second Amendment. So they're pretty much damaged first, and now they're going after our second. We cannot allow them to get our Second Amendment. So we're kind of in a really precarious position, because if you literally say, get to the street and get your guns and civil war, by the way, that's what they want. And that will take our guns away. And they take our guns away, it's over. Now, what we have to do, we have to have discipline. We have to train ourselves. We have to be calm. We got to call out the bullshit. We've got to be able to speak with truth and transparency. Here is the numbers. If you look at our work is designed to play back them. Now they have to explain it. That's how the system works and how you have to do it. Now, it's hard. It's costly. And it's a joke. And then you got to understand what the GOP does. I started screaming years ago that, look, there's a 24-month timer on these ballots. I had to tell lawmakers this, had no idea. And in 22 months in most states, that they be able to destroy the ballots 12 hours before that 22 months expired. The GOP filed 71 lawsuits to get a hold of the ballots. They hadn't even served everybody, and all the states dumped them. You just kind of have to understand how this works. So where we are right now is we have to have candid conversations. We have to stop yelling and screaming at people. You have to stop telling that transgender dude with a Peroni's right hook in his wanker who wants to profess it's an ugly labia, look, you got to understand, I don't care about that stuff, but I do care about us being Americans, and we're all in it together. So let's talk about what we're really suffering here. We're now paying 100% more for our groceries in most places. We're certainly paying 100% more for our gas or our electric bill or any of that. And that's never going to be in control. And by the way, how the rig works is they run all the prices up until you scream to the government, help me, help me, help me. And then they synthetically take control of everything, and it looks like a lower down, but it's never back to the original it was. We're trapped in a system. Mm-hmm. And the first thing we have to do is learn we're all in this together. So I say some pretty controversial things. You can be transgendered. You can be a freaking atheist. You can be a Satanist. You can't meddle with kids, but you can be any one of those, and I'll be in the foxhole with you, right? And we will fight for this country, and that's a figure of speech, by the way, because it's all our rights, freedoms, and liberty. And by the way, you have the rights, freedom, and liberty. If you want to wear a tutu and a dress, that's your stuff. But right now, we have to fight to be the country we are. So let's look at the actual statistics. We're the only country in the world where at any one time on our border, we got 160 countries breaking in because everybody wants to be American. But the system doesn't want it. And so you have to ask yourself, why all of a sudden is Antifa in France? And why all of a sudden is Antifa in Germany? Because this is a global plan to push everything down to one thing. Now, if we wake up to the fact and learn to read the signs and sees, here's all it takes. Talk. Like right now, I'll ask you a question. The one thing the system can count on is most people will never raise a finger. Have you raised a finger and shared this program right now? See, Most people haven't. They know you won't do it. Or some people don't want to have it on their timeline because they don't want to be called conspiracy theorists. Well, that's what they do. The bottom line here is, folks, we win this by knowledge and power and talking. You need to talk to your family. You need to talk to your friends. You need to have a family meetings. You got to talk to your kids that you think you lost. You need to talk to all the friends and family that cut you off because of 2020 and they were insurrecting it. And you just need to slow down and say, look, put elections aside, even put the freaking candidates aside. This has now come down to America. And you either believe America is a great, incredible country where we have freedoms and liberty. That's why 160 countries want to break in. And that's all we're voting for right now. But if we stay on this path with millions bleeding across our border and they won't arrest a serial rapist because he's Muslim and he just didn't know that that was a sin, we're going to lose our country. And if we lose our country, the whole world goes down. And then you got to see the manipulation for it is. The reason we're fighting about school books and a transgender that and black this and purple this is because they've got us fighting all these little hyphenated fights. And they're spreading you as thin as they can to wear your ass out because finally you'll give up and, oh, I can't do anything. And that's not true. What you're doing right now is the most important thing. You're learning, you're understanding, and you can share. And if you've got to watch this 2 or 3 times to understand it and show the proof, I will debate anybody. Go get the best people out there you think are academics. I put out the call every time. Debate me. Here it is. I'll show you the facts. Tell me where I'm wrong. They won't do it because they know they can't do it because it's empirical proof. But if we understand, get your neighbors to vote. Talk about voting and say, right now, let's just vote for America. We got to bring down our prices. We've got to bring down our price of energy. We've got to bring down our price of groceries. We've got to stop sending so much money overseas. We got to stop paying for illegals $2,200 a month and not even taking care of our own military. And we've got to focus on ourselves a bit to save ourselves. And can you do that just for this one election? Let's just vote to stabilize America because right now we're hemorrhaging.
And as well said. I mean, that's absolutely true. Everything there. Just so that I understood what you mentioned earlier, you would suggest that everyone, did I hear correctly, you request a mail-in ballot and you show up to vote on election day without having filled out your mail-in ballot.
Well, not only fill out, we call it the Fuller FU, the guy that came up with
keep
this,
it sealed. Right? Keep it sealed.
Yeah, don't touch it. Request a mail-in ballot.
Yeah. So that way,
get it sent to you. Right. And do not open it.
Don't open it
at all. Do not open it. Don't even open it. Have it in your purse or your jacket pocket when you go to vote in person. Mm-hmm. Show up to vote in person. You're either going to be given a brand new ballot, which means, okay, great. Or just like what happened in California with Newsom recall, you're going to have 70, 90% of the people told, well, I'm sorry, you already voted. So here's what happens. And this is, look, you got to get your James Bond on, folks. You're going to play a little bit of spy game here. So you're going to walk in. You're going to know you have your ballot and you have not opened it. Whatever you do, don't open it. Don't throw it away.
Don't make sure they don't know that you have it. Leave it in the car if you have to. You can bring it out later.
No. You want to have it with you, but hide it. I don't care if you stick it in your crotch, but you got to have it with you. I'll tell you why. So now you've got a ballot you haven't opened. Maybe you have 4 or 5 of them, okay? They got variations of your name on it.
Oh, yeah.
You walk in, and when they tell you, I'm sorry, Miss Jones, but we show you've already voted. Now, here's what you do. Don't cuss. Don't yell. Don't scream. Don't say this is fraud. Do the following. Say, I'm sorry, but I don't think that's correct. Would you please look again? They will recheck it. And then they're going to come back to you and I'm saying, I'm sorry, it shows you've already voted. But they're going to say, I can let you vote a provisional and we'll investigate it. At that point says, could you call a supervisor just to verify this? Not that I don't believe you, honey, but can you just call a supervisor? Now remember, you're creating a legal trail. You got a worker who may just be a volunteer. But you got a supervisor that somewhere is tied to the county, probably in a salaried position in a lot of these places. Please say, will you just double check this for me? Something's wrong. Now the supervisor, now you've included 2 people, possibly 3, will tell you, I'm sorry, you've already voted. At that time, step away. Get your provisional. They're going to give you a provisional. You say, what do I do? They say, we're going to give you a provisional. Step away. Now, what you've done is you've walked in. We started teaching people to do this about 3 years ago. You've walked in and you've got your sheriff. Make sure you got, it's not the police. It's the sheriff. And you dial your sheriff and you say, I am at a business and I'm watching my, somebody has stolen my identity and I'm standing right here and I got people to confirm it. I want to file a report. Will you please send a deputy? Now, what will happen is they will send a deputy. The deputy will show up. It'll kind of scare these guys and you will tell them the story. You still have not told them you have your mail-in ballot. The deputy will now go to the same people you talked to. Remember, you're creating touch points. And now the deputy is going to get the same exact information you got. And when the deputy comes back to you and says, I'm sorry, they said you've already voted by mail-in ballot, reach into your purse or jacket and say, here is my mail-in ballot. It is not open. I'm telling you, I didn't vote by mail. I'm here to vote. I need to file an identity theft. Several things will happen. They will write a report. You have the right to keep that as evidence. Do not surrender it. Do not give it to the election people. They'll want it. That is your property. It got mailed to you. It belongs to you. It's addressed to you. They no longer have property of it when it went out. And you hang on to that evidence and you file that identity theft report right then and there. And now what you've done is you've codified this process. You have now lifted it out of voting, right? Out of voting. And you've turned it into what it should be, identity theft. Now, what should happen is they should allow you to vote because you can evidence I haven't. Now you should get to vote and they should begin the process to cancel that one. And you have the evidence and you have a police report.
And does that also, I guess, put a microscope on at least that voting location, the precinct, yes. and now let's see what else is going on here.
There you go. Once you find this happened, imagine how many people, if they would have followed that advice with Gruesome Newsom, but just did it the right way. You got to maintain your cool. Do not say it's treason. Do not say it's fraud. You don't even have to say what party you're voting for. You're just having to say it's identity theft because that's what it is. Yeah. But see, that crime can be investigated by the sheriffs. Voter fraud, election fraud cannot at that point.
See, if everyone just went through this process that you just laid out,
we'd have millions
of them. Bing, 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 all over the country on election
They could not get around it. They could not get around it. And by the way, if you actually think, oh, I'm going to report it on my app. I got the dippity doodah patriot. I'm a patriot and you're not a patriot and I'm more patriot than you app. And you're going to take a picture and report it to them and they're going to report it. BS. The courts have already said that's spam and it's junk, not admissible in court. You're not going to report it on an app. You are basically creating fodder for the system to ignore. You do this in person because it's you and you're the only one that can do it.
Once you do that, Jovan, and you walk out, you've got your report made and everything, and you're getting back in your car. What about calling your local news report story hotline?
Well, what you should have is number one, the chance that's why you should vote in groups. If it happens to 2 or 3 or 4 people in your voting party, then you collect them all and you do it. Calling press ain't going to do. Saying there's 10 of us here and it happened to all 10 of us, maybe you'll get the press interested. But you understand this is a war of a million paper cuts, but you have to create empirical evidence. And this is why I say vote people, you have to vote in groups and you have to line up right in front of behind each other, know where everybody is. And that is what has to happen. You force it all into review. It gives the sheriff the power to investigate. Well, wait a minute. How could you get a ballot if this person has their ballot? You're giving the sheriff's tools. You can do it. But this is also why they've outlawed cameras and stuff like that. I suggest you should be wearing a body cam to show it and prove it, right? Mm-hmm. But this is why they try to hide all of this stuff, even if it's just recording, right? Just get it recorded, do whatever. They're cheap now. You can buy them for $10 and have them in your pocket. But this is the contract that binds all of us to America. Let's all these politicians spend money. But this stuff about we got to know, we got to vote early. So that's that. You know what that is? That's so the politicians can say, well, we're ahead in the polls or we're behind. We need more. It's crap. It's why would you tell the enemy a month in advance how you voted or where you voted?
Yeah.
Get it? Work smarter.
I would suggest too, there's a few things that have been simmering in my brain while we've been talking about this. And one of them is as we were researching this and as we were discovering this system, I'm telling you something, I could have become a very rich woman by betting in Vegas on these close races. And I'll tell you how you recognize this. Remember when, and this popped in my brain just as I was, doing all of the book and everything, but it was back in the Obama-Romney, I think it was, campaign. And Obama said, they had put the social media, arsenal together. And he said, you really only need to win about 6 counties in the United States, which Jovan has told us about. And when you look and you see now what the system is and what it does and how it can be manipulated and what Jovan has shown us. Remember, Rush Limbaugh used to always say, polls are not for facts or math or statistics. Polls are for headlines, right? And so in the 2022 election, before they even started voting, I said, Kari Lake is not going to win. And my dad said, what are you talking about? I said, they're not going to let her. The polls are too tight. What you need to watch for, if you're worried about this system, is where you've got tightening of polls. And that's where they're going to operate and look specifically in cities, towns, counties. And I could have told you that Dr. Oz was going to lose. I could have told you exactly what was going to happen in the Georgia Senate race. Both times, the first one and the runoff, I knew what was going to happen with Kari Lake. There was about 6 races that it was easy. And I called Jovan. I don't know if you remember the phone call, but I said, what we should do is we should get a lot of these really large, high number donors to make massive bets on Vegas on the opposition, because what's going to happen, and let Vegas take a big stinking hit on this stuff. And then let Vegas complain.
When you learn their words and you learn their signals, just like that video I showed you from Bernie, they always tell you it's always there. They always butter you up. They already basically tell you where it's going to be forever to count it, whatever. And even you have Bernie said, well, they're probably going to count election day first. When I can show you it's in reverse, they ran it in. It's all about actionable intelligence. Look, folks, this is espionage. This is spy craft. Yeah. This is tradecraft as it is. And that's what they use against us. But if we just work smart and understand, look, they don't spend billions and billions of dollars to suppress you from sharing and talking stuff in social media because you're irrelevant. If you were irrelevant, you wouldn't freaking matter. But the deal is you do matter because they're afraid of you. We, the people, have the power. And even though this is horrible to see, we're all seeing it happen in real time. Be glad that we're not back in Christian times where the Romans show up and conscript your sons to the army and rape your wife and children and take your land and cut your head off, right? We live in modern times. We can see this. You just have to understand the power you have. And I tell people this in parting, look, everything in life is a number game. Everything we deal with is a number game. But I'm going to tell you something I totally believe. In olden times, God used to talk to prophets. Prophets would go around and share the word. I personally believe what we're experiencing right now with good and light and dark and evil and everything else and angels and demons, I believe there's a war going on around us, is for the very first time, God is talking to every one of us at the same time. He's letting us see it. Now, I believe this is a test of human free will to see if we even deserve to be here or stay free. And you have to exercise that free will. But if you're hesitant about exercising your free will, I would literally tell you one thing. Number one, think about if you've ever run a foot race. School at any time. Did you win? People have win, people have loses. Have you ever run a marathon? Have you ever run a 5K? You're running against 50 people. Maybe you're running against 100 people. As I keep on doing it and going across that, You might realize, well, I'm not really a winner. I'm not really a winner. I'm just an average person. But I want to let you know one thing. Male seminal fluid, is as horrible as that sounds, is anywhere from 500 million to 1 billion semen. And you were that 1 in a billion. You were the 1 in the billion that pierced the egg and became a light. And to me, that means God chose you to be here at this moment in time. God chose you to see every bit of this. You already are the winner that makes the difference, and God has proven it. And God has proven he wants you here. And I just want you to think about that, because accept the responsibility that you've been chosen, just like a prophet of old, to spread the truth and to fight this battle. And God saw fit to have you here, out of all the iterations you could have been, to be here right now in history.
Welcome back. Oh, where do you want again?
We got Keith there. He may be checking a mic or something if it went
We had
down.
a mic problem earlier today. If I may, while Keith is trying to come back in, because I know we're getting ready to wrap. But again, simmering in my brain over all this time with this book. There have been a lot of different. Again, I go back to Glenn Beck had a I think it was Sarah Gonzalez did a special, and she sat in Michigan with I believe it was the Secretary of State up there. And he said, you've got a bunch of these groups and they're just making it look like a bunch of wackadoodle stuff, which, you got to kind of look at it and you kind of got to agree that, you've got this stuff going on, and it has to come down to cold, hard facts. But instead of pointing the finger at, China did this, or they did this with the, Iranians or this or that, go back to, and Jovan, I know you will appreciate this, go back to just regular investigative types of questions. Who has the motive? Who would have the most to gain in rigging an election? Who would be able to mitigate the most obvious risks? Money. Any infiltration of the system is going to take a huge amount of money. It's going to be a massive financial undertaking. Who would have those resources? How could they be spent where you couldn't find them? Method. With the American election system, who is it that could attack such a scenario? And a model is, can you look at a pattern that suggests that there's a reasonable entity that fills all these gaps that can undertake such a thing? And then look at, as far as the model goes, look at lawfare, look at weaponization of the system. Do you believe that these are groups that would do it in the election system? And marks, look at what does the evidence say? And Jovan did a masterful job and presenting it, and I would say just such a patriotic job of keeping it and maintaining it, and just use your brain, the book, I think, makes it pretty obvious that we've got a system of government that has proven that they cannot be trusted they've admitted they've rigged election in other countries. They've pushed, their finger hard on, in many countries. And, would they do it here? I think after what you read in this book, it's very, very, very hard to trust the system that we have, and we have to return it back to constitutionally who it belongs to, and that's us here in our states and our localities.
Absolutely. I can see Keith in the background working potentially on audio.
Yeah, it's his mic.
Trying to reconnect. I don't know, maybe Eve, if you could text or whatever. I don't know if you want us to wrap. All I want to say, by the way, to everyone listening, don't get depressed about this. Get angry about this, but don't get depressed about this. But you got to remember, we're all in this together. We are all in this together. Okay. Keith, which one do you want to go to stage with? There you go.
Oh my goodness. I tell you, I was telling Eve before we got started that my microphone cable had been severed, and I kind of jerry-rigged it before we got started. And anyway, it failed. So
here I am. But I knew that I left the show in good hands. I mean, you guys didn't need me there. I honestly, I have asked all of my questions. I'm so grateful that y'all shared all of this information, and I would highly encourage everyone to please go purchase Countdown to Chaos. I'm sorry for my technical issues, but the presentation was absolutely, it's stunning. It's enraging. And I'm so grateful that people took time out of their day celebrating the 4th of July and our quote independence that we're still trying to hang on to. We can salvage this, like you said, and I appreciate you giving us hope, because you gave us answers here. It wasn't just saying, hey, here's what happened, here is what's been happening. It's here's how we get around this and we can overcome this. And I really, personally, speaking for myself, I absolutely needed to hear that message. I absolutely needed to hear how to outsmart the system and use it for our advantage, and I dare I say for good. And the amount of time and resources that you and Eve and others have put into this, your personal fortunes, your time, your sacrifice, and risk to your own well-being is not lost on people like me. And I'm just grateful for individuals like you who will not let this stuff go, who will not just sweep it under the rug, and who will not be silenced and push back in ways that can make a real difference. And the founding fathers would be so grateful for this, quite frankly. And that is why I suggested we do this show on this day at this time, because this is exactly what it's all about. This is what they fought for: election integrity, and for us, the American people, to have the right to tell the government who we want, and make sure that that is respected at the ballot box. And I'm just grateful for y'all and for everything that you've done in this fight, and I hope that you will continue to.
Thank you for having us. Thank you for allowing this share. Thank everybody for tuning in. We hope you learned something. That's what we try to do. Thank you, and I really appreciate you, Keith, for doing this.
Yeah, many thanks.
Yeah.
We've got another edition in the works. Don't know how long that'll take, because that's a lot of work. But one thing, if I could please plead with the listeners out there, do whatever you can to volunteer in your local precincts.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's my last word.
I can't wait to try the mail-in ballot thing and show up on election day. Thank you for that guidance and all of this evidence. And please keep in touch, both of you. I consider you friends at this point, and I hope to help any way that I can. So thank you so much for being a part of today's At the Mic.
Thank you. Happy 4th of July, folks. Take care, folks. Bye-bye.
Happy 4th of July. Jovan, Hutton, Pulitzer.locals.com. Make sure that you go there. Fireaxe.academy to learn how to push back within the system. Please share this video. Make sure that your friends and family are awake, and that they not only watch this, but then they also go and purchase this book and go to those websites. Thank you so much. We'll see y'all later.